How's it going, Denise?
Sorry.
We can start? Okay. Hi, everyone. Today is Monday, October 24th, Planning Commission, regular meeting. Denise, you want to go through roll call? Should we do a wave for commission?
We get a new name tag.
Oh.
I've got the old one.
Chair Elrod.
Here.
Chair Pro Tem Rudnicki.
Here.
Okay. Commissioner Graham.
Here.
Commissioner Stallman.
Here.
Commissioner Kruger.
Here.
Okay, and then we're expecting Commissioner Samuelson, so we'll see if he comes. And absent tonight are Commissioners Bolt, Corbett, and Miles.
Thank you. Next item, approval of agenda. Anybody have any changes? Or do I have approval? Good. Okay. Next, minutes to be approved. These are the certification of the September 26th regular meeting minutes. Do I have a motion on the table for approval?
So move to approve.
Second.
Okay. All in favor? Okay. Next up, we have public comment for general business. So that would be, no, we don't have it because we don't have any general business. No public comment for general business. And we will go straight, there will be, though, time for public comment after we go through the public hearing. So public hearing, we have two items. We have a resolution concerning amendment and rezoning for the Riverside General Plan Development. And then we have an ordinance amending Title 10 of the City Code. So we will go ahead and start with Andrea.
Just 1 second, sorry, here. Okay. We have someone up there.
Yeah.
Good? Okay. Thanks for waiting. Good evening. I'm Andrea Memnall with Planning, and I am here tonight to present to you Resolution 22-2016, and this concerns a rezoning and an amended General Plan Development Plan for the Riverside General Plan Development Plan, located on 5000 South Prince Street and a portion of 4900 South Prince Street. The process for this overall project is that we're looking first at an amended General Plan Development Plan and rezoning, and that goes to a public hearing before the Planning Commission, and that's tonight, and then it would continue on to City Council for final approval. If approved, then it moves on to preliminary and final plat. Preliminary plat is approved by Planning Commission, final plat by City Council, and then finally the site development plan is the last stage in the development process, and that is where the details are looked at in the site layout, and it is approved administratively. The location of the Plat 56 is in fact on the Platte River to the west side. You can see that Bellevue Avenue runs east-west to the south, and then South Prince Street runs north-south. The Walgreens is on the corner there of Bellevue and South Prince Street. And this is the next parcel north of the Walgreens, which is vacant. And then further up, as you continue on Prince Street, the street dead ends into the Riverside Apartments. Surrounding uses do include commercial, retail. We also have some outdoor storage to the northwest, and across the river there is industrial. This is a street view of the subject property with Riverside Apartments in the background. And here is a map of the area that's proposed to be rezoned. You can see again here, it's between the Walgreens and the Riverside Apartments. The proposed zoning is from PDC, which is Planned Development Commercial, to PDR, Planned Development Residential. The proposal is to rezone the property to Planned Development Residential to accommodate the development of multifamily homes. The plan proposes up to 19 dwelling units per acre with a maximum of 56 units. The units could go up to a maximum of 4 stories in height, and the project would generate approximately 300 vehicle trips per day based on a traffic study that we received from an outside consultant. This is an illustrative site plan that the applicant has submitted. It wouldn't necessarily be the site plan, but the purpose for the illustrative plan is to show a way in which, if the zoning requirements are met as proposed, the site could potentially look. What we're looking at for setbacks are setbacks around the perimeter of the larger site. So on the west, 7.5 feet, the north, 5, the east alongside the river would be 8 feet, and 10 feet along the south side. Setbacks for individual lots within the development, there would not be any, and you can see that they're townhome development style in this illustrative plan, and so that would be to accommodate the development style of townhomes. There is an orientation of the units, and so units that are adjacent to the river will face the river. Units adjacent to South Prince will face Prince Street. Each of the units has a 2-car garage that's accessed by an internal road system. And the applicant has proposed that garage doors will be of frosted glass and will make the use of colored scored concrete to help with the look and feel of the overall development. This again is an illustrative drawing that the applicant has submitted. And what it shows is one of the ways the access could be handled for the residents down to the Mary Carter Greenway. The applicant has committed to, as part of their plan, a minimum of 2 access points that would be available to all residents in the development. And the applicant is also committed in the plan to a requirement that there will be patios, decks, and rooftop decks for each of the units. Back to the elevation here, the applicant has proposed what they're calling ballpark architectural style. They can talk perhaps more about it, but it is a use of brick and corrugated metal siding. And as I mentioned before, 2 parking spaces per unit in the garages, and then there will be additional guest parking provided at 0.28 spaces per unit, and those will be outdoor spaces, at least, well, they wouldn't. Once we see the site plan, that could change, but at least on the illustrative plan, they're being showed as part of a lot. So this is a chart that was in your staff communication, and it compares the existing zoning to the proposed zoning. As part of the original or the existing Riverside General Plan Development Plan under PDC zoning, there were uses commercial, retail, office, and restaurant that were allowed under this plan. The plan allowed a floor area ratio of 3 to 1. And then let's see, I guess the other pertinent piece here is that the unobstructed open space was set at 65%. Now that compares to the proposal that would allow multifamily dwelling units and accessory uses as the use on this spot. and up to 19 dwelling units per acre. As I mentioned before, 56 would be the maximum. And then the proposed open space would be at 25%, which is in fact the minimum code requirement in the zoning code for multifamily residential in a PDR district. The units can, as I said, can go up to 4 stories, and that would be a maximum of 52 height for 4 stories. If the units are 3 stories, they can be a maximum of up to 38 feet. Okay, we'll move into the analysis section. There is a full analysis in the staff report, and I've picked out what I feel are the more important criteria to address as part of the presentation. First, we'll just go over briefly the 3 different sections of the analysis. The first is going to be on the rezoning from PDC to PDR. The rezoning area is 3.1 acres, and again, going from PDC to PDR. The second section of the analysis is the amendment to the Riverside GPDP. Again, that's to allow for the development of multifamily residential uses and the particular zoning that will go along with it. And then there's the applicable criteria in the code, and that includes zoning map amendments, compatibility with the goals and policies of the citywide plan, the Centennial Neighborhood Plan, and then the intent of the planned development district. As for the zoning map amendment, a freestanding zone district in the city of Littleton must be a minimum of 180,000 square feet. And this proposed rezoning in and of itself does not quite meet the 180,000 square feet, but the code allows for a new parcel being rezoned to essentially piggyback onto an adjacent site to meet that 180,000 square feet. And so in this case, the PDR proposed zoning matches the PDR zoning to the north, and that would result in about approximately 13 acres of PDR zone. In terms of consistency with the comprehensive plan, one of the criteria is, or not criteria, but one of the policies is that Littleton will value livability, diversity, and progress, value the importance of its citizens and natural resources, strive for sustainability in economic, environmental, and social decisions, and raise the bar to increase the quality of community and economic development. And the staff's analysis that the Plat 56 will provide a high-density residential environment, as proposed, that is highly livable and distinct from other housing in the area. Plat 56 makes use of existing infrastructure and helps achieve the city's vision of economic and environmental sustainability. And finally, the location and design of Plat 56 raises the bar on the quality of community development. Policy 1.6 of the comprehensive plan is to generate more opportunities for residents to live, shop, and play where they work, and to work, shop, and play where they live. The location of Plat 56 is within easy walking distance of shopping in the river, to employment centers in Littleton, and proximity to the regional rail system. And it generates more opportunities for residents to live, shop, and play in one location. Goal 2 concerns an outdoor Littleton. And I've paraphrased a little bit in this one. Essentially, the pertinent part was to capitalize and expand upon Littleton's valuable resources, including South Platte River, parks, trails, and views, make these resources as available to the public as possible while protecting and enhancing them. And a multiple unit housing adjacent to the river with access to the trail provides activation to this area along the Mary Carter Greenway and, of course, easy access for all residents. Policy 4.3 is to encourage high-quality design, architecture, and landscape architecture throughout Littleton. The subject property has been vacant since the approval of the Riverside GPDP, which has been over 20 years ago. Its location on a dead-end street, combined with its lack of visibility from Bellevue and other commercial corridors, has likely been an impediment to its development over the years. The Plat 56 is committed to a high-quality architecture and well-planned landscaping. So this fact, with the high-quality architecture, together with the fact that the property has been vacant for more than 20 years, make Plat 56 consistent with this goal and its related policies. The Centennial Neighbor Plan includes a land use policy that says that any development proposal be carefully scrutinized to assure adequate buffering and compatibility between residential and commercial neighborhoods. This proposal appears to provide a layout for close-knit residential development for neighbors to know their neighbors, as well as a good transition between the apartments to the north and the commercial to the south and also to the west. All right, the planned development district criteria in the code, I've pulled out a few of these, and I'll just read off the intent here, which is that the planned development district is hereby created to promote the public health, safety, and general welfare by allowing more flexible development based on a comprehensive integrative plan. There's several criteria. I've pulled out number 3, which is to encourage innovative development or redevelopment of all land uses to meet the contemporary needs of the community by providing for a greater variety and mix of uses. The proposed Plat 56 will provide housing that takes advantage of its proximity to the Mary Carter Greenway and the Platte River by providing private open space that fronts the Greenway and the river, and creating a pedestrian access to the Greenway for all residents in the development. And further, the internal driveway will be enhanced by the use of colored patterned concrete on the drive service and frosted glass on the garage doors. The proposal to create a site design together with the architectural design will appeal to a demographic looking for an urban design together with a low-maintenance property. Criteria number 5, as part of the PD criteria, is to require that the nature intensity of development be supported by adequate open space to serve the development and to minimize impacts on adjacent and future development. In terms of open space, the GPDP proposes a minimum of 25% open space within the development. Staff feels that the access to the adjacent greenway and the river will also serve the residents of the development. Plat 56 is an urban-style development in which amenities such as shared open space and pools are traded for a high quality of design in terms of architectural style and required decks. The project's location along the greenway gives easy access to one of the city's greatest amenities, and also a safe route to walk, to bike downtown, and to employment opportunities. And then we move on to number 5, continued some impacts and compatibility to the adjacent uses. As I mentioned before, there are commercial uses to the south and to the west, and the traffic that would be generated by this development, approximately 331 trips per day, should not impede access to those retail commercial sites. And parking is being provided consistent with the code, and so that the residents of the Plat 56 should be able to park on site and not take up parking in the commercial areas. As for the apartments to the north, the Riverside apartments have a density of 23 dwelling units per acre, and that compares to the Plat 56's proposed density of 19 dwelling units per acre. And the similar densities should provide for compatibility, each one having adequate parking for themselves. So in conclusion, staff is recommending approval of the application for Plat 56, finding that all of the criteria has been met. And Resolution 22A-2016 is in your packet, and that is set up to approve the rezoning amended general plan development plan. There's also a second resolution, that's 22B, and that is set up for denial should the board choose that option. I have can be available for questions, and the applicant is also here and prepared to make a presentation as well.
Thank you, Andrea. So let's start with any questions of Andrea.
You said this isn't the permanent concept. I mean, you'll be getting obviously a different development when you see this in its next stage.
Not necessarily. So what we've shown here are illustrative plans. I do believe that the applicant wishes to move forward with something identical or similar should this be approved. But the fact is that this is a zoning document. So in the event that the applicant decided to, get approval but move on to something else, a new developer would be able to work with those zoning requirements, perhaps in a different layout.
My concern is mostly based in the traffic plan. 30-foot wide roads bring some concern for first responder access to me. Not only the access to the various lots for the, getting to fires, but I mean, an ambulance doesn't arrive alone. It arrives with 6 other vehicles. And just the backing out of either of these streets don't allow for a turn radius that these big trucks need to do that turn. I noticed in the one above that is pretty much taken into account. The streets appear to be wider. I couldn't scale it since it's not to scale there. But it appears to have a much more curved layout that allows for better transition of emergency vehicles. And although we wouldn't want a fire by any stretch of the imagination, unless these were going to be sprinklered in some way or another, I think getting units in there and out would be very tricky.
So we haven't gotten to the level of discussing sprinklers yet or not, but we have had the engineers in the Public Works Department review all of these plans. And what we're looking at is a dimension, a width of the driveway there that does in fact meet the standard and can accommodate the fire truck. Fire department has reviewed the plans as well. In terms of backing out of a garage, generally a back out distance of 24 feet is very adequate for someone to be able to get out of the garage. And so we feel that at this point that it does meet the city's criteria.
I'm not worried about the cars backing out. I'm worried about an ambulance at the end of one of these roads or a fire truck having to back all the way out. There's no way for them to turn.
Yes, I believe the requirement is that once a dead end reaches 150 feet or greater, then we're looking at a cul-de-sac or some sort of a ring road.
The zoning map makes it appear like the Walgreens in this site were originally the same zone, rezone, a PDC, a PD commercial. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. It's currently PDC.
Was that parcel originally owned by the same owner and then split half of it and sold it to Walmart or Walgreens or whoever owns the Walgreens building, and then left this other parcel just as part of it?
Yeah, my best understanding is that the Walgreens did split off. I believe that was, the Walgreens was constructed perhaps about 12 years ago, 13 years ago. And the Riverside Apartments to the north owned this vacant property, is my understanding all this time. And so at this point, they're looking to sell it off, and the developer is now under contract for it.
Okay, that's it for now. Thanks.
Andrea, I had questions about the parking, but it looks like the parking does conform to current city codes. Is that correct?
Yes, the parking requirement for multifamily is 1.5 spaces per dwelling unit. And what we're looking at here is 2 spaces per dwelling unit plus the additional guest parking provided at 0.28 spaces per unit.
Okay.
That contrasts with the Riverside Apartments, which are at 1.5 spaces per unit. It's a little bit different when you have apartments because you have a shared parking lot and people come and go. In a situation where you have the townhomes, I think the applicant was wanting to do the 1.5 because, of course, you don't share your garage space.
did a walking of the site at around 7:30 last Saturday. There were 18 cars on this lot, the applicant's lot. It looks like those cars are owned by the people in the Riverside Apartments. Is that an agreement made with the owner of this empty lot, or are they just parking there because they, renegade parking, let's call it, or what is it?
Yes, so currently the owner of the Riverside Apartments does own this property, and so it is probably just available for them to use.
What will happen to those cars?
Yes, well, there is parking available on South Prince Street for those cars that are unable to find in those cases, they're unable to find a spot on their property. It is, the property is in compliance with its parking requirement of 1.5 spaces.
Just going to put a little pressure on the apartments, not currently. The rather large drainage easement and the culverts, et cetera, looks like they stay, and I assume the holding ponds for this proposal will drain into those swales?
Well, that hasn't yet been settled. It's possible that drainage system that's on the north side of Walgreens could be changed a bit. What we're looking at initially for the Plat 56 is that it would be piped on site and head to the south towards the Walgreens site, and perhaps it would all be piped at that point, but still needs to be evaluated and looked at in detail.
Okay. The open space requirement, currently 65%, proposed to go to 25%, is rather abrupt. What is the current open space provided for the Riverside Apartments? Looks like it's a neighborhood of 50% or even higher. Do you know what it is?
Let's see, I think I have a, sorry. Just a second, I think I have it on the chart here.
51.
51%, very good guess.
51?
51%, yes.
Okay. That's all my questions for you. Thank you.
This side of the table?
No questions right now. Thanks.
Bruce?
There's a lot of content regarding walkability, which is a net positive. The intersection at Bellevue and Prince has a very short light cycle, as far as I can tell. And I know that because I drive it frequently to go to work. Is staff looking at modifications from a ped crossing perspective to make that more visible, better access? Because obviously the concept of having people living there and coming across to River Point Downs makes a lot of sense, but you need the engineering to work.
Yes, so that is typically the type of more detailed work that happens at the site development plan stage. And at that point, our traffic operations staff is folded into that type of review. But I was unaware of that, and so I'll make a note of it.
All right, that's good. I didn't see, well, let me ask a question, and I'll ask it to you, but to anybody else. I thought I read in here something, and I can't find it now, something about some sort of a property exchange. Is there anything in here? Did you guys read anything about that? Maybe
in the staff report? Yes.
Was it in there?
Yes.
What was that?
Other than the rezone, are they exchanging parcels for something?
Well, the situation is such that there are currently some easements within the property and an odd configuration of parcels. And in fact, the Riverside Apartments has their southernmost row of parking over their property line onto the proposed Plat 56.
Okay, so it's technical issues in terms of cleaning all of that up to everybody's satisfaction. Is that what I'm taking away from
Yes, I would characterize it like that. So in fact, it's a bit of a, the Riverside will grab its parking, and then the Plat 56 will grab a little bit more to create more of a straight line.
Okay, all right. I didn't see anything in here regarding floodplain designations. I kind of assume it is. Remember when we looked at the rezone for the one over off of, what was that, Weaver? That was close to the river, and I would assume this is in a floodplain, and so you have to take some steps in that regard.
Yes, originally it was in a floodplain, and that was worked through at the time of earlier development on this overall GPDP.
So the drainage issues and so forth are already in place from an infrastructure perspective?
Well, I can't speak for the vacant lot. At least I believe that the floodplain was eliminated from the site. And as for drainage with the new development, that will need to be re-examined, and a plan will need to be approved for that.
Okay, perhaps the applicant can speak to that.
Yes.
Given again, some of the walkability issues, and in fact, in the applicant's statement, is their attachment, they talk about no vehicles required because local amenities within walking distance abound, which is good. Was there staff conversation about the need for 2 parking spaces per unit? I know some of the other developments that have come through have proposed 1.5 or 1 3/4 spaces per unit. I suppose these are owner-occupied units as opposed to rental units, which is a significant variance. But did that concept come up, given that if you only needed 1.5, in theory, you could maybe have some with 2, some with 1, that kind of thing?
Well, the applicant when the project was first submitted to the city, it did include the parking ratio of 2 units, 2 parking spaces per unit, plus the guest parking. And I suppose that it would be, well, I suppose it could be possible. We'd have to double check in the zoning code if someone actually wanted to rent one of their garage spaces to somebody in an adjacent unit or such. But I think the idea is that these are townhomes, and you'll have your 2-car garage, and that's what you'll use.
Okay, it's not unreasonable. And then sort of following up on the ownership issue, the whole construction defects thing at the state level has been not only onerous, but disappointing in terms of the legislature's inability to rectify the situation. Council, a couple years ago, did pass an ordinance giving some air cover to people who wanted to do multi-family ownership versus rental apartments, because we didn't have any of that product. And so this is, I think, just an editorial comment. It's a desirable product given the lack of ownership units in a multi-family kind of setting, townhome versus condo, that kind of thing. So again, from the staff perspective, I mean, is everybody apprised of what the city had done and more or less legally what's going on with the state, just so we don't get halfway down the road and all of a sudden somebody figures out that there's a difference between the two, and
Yes.
could cause issues?
Staff is aware. We understand that the applicant is interested in establishing lots and selling them,
Okay.
as opposed to an overall rental property.
Okay.
And as such, the applicant has looked into that situation. I believe has evaluated. Applicants can speak directly to it, but has evaluated the circumstances.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else, Bruce?
Nope.
I have a few questions. Andrea, can you talk to me about how under the PD you can absorb the designation of the adjacent property? And in this case, it is suggesting that it's absorbing the PDR from Riverside. What was that original PDR? I mean, you specify, you have a table that shows what Riverside Apartments is, but I'd like to understand what was the PDR that was approved. Do you know? So this table
Okay.
speaks to Riverside Apartments, but if it said PDR, I'm just trying to determine, did they develop to the maximum available, or?
Did they develop to the maximum available?
Like, for example, the on density and number of dwelling units?
Yes, so the Riverside Apartments is at 23 dwelling units per acre, and I believe that that was the maximum allowed under that PD plan. And it is over 10 acres in site, and so at that time it didn't exceed the 180,000 square feet that was the minimum size.
And with, so I'm assuming the size of the dwelling units at Riverside Apartments and the size of the dwelling units at Platt are different because despite a lower density, it seems like it's being made up in square footage and height and the less open space. So I'm just trying to reconcile. This appears to be much more dense, but yet from looking at the density per acre, it would suggest otherwise. Can you help me reconcile those numbers?
Yes, so of course, I don't know the square footage of the Riverside Apartments, but I would anticipate that you're exactly right on that. The Platt 56 townhomes will probably likely be 3 and 4 stories tall. The applicant can speak to the square footage of that. And so as such, there may be, in fact, more coverage. I believe there is more coverage of the lot on the Platt 56 than the Riverside Apartments.
Okay. And so if I assume that, you know, what on your table says Riverside Apartments, if I was to scratch that out and put PDR, that's the PDR that was approved for this area would have said 23 dwelling units per acre.
I have the plan here. I can double check it, but I believe that's the case.
And it's also, I want to understand that also for the height and for the unobstructed open space. That according to the PDR, that's what was prescribed at the time.
Okay, so the height, the maximum allowable height is 45 feet. Parking is 1.5 spaces per dwelling unit. Maximum of 248 residential units. And open space. The open space is only provided in acres, and it is 11.18 acres on this plan. I believe that's when it included likely the vacant lot to the south. And there is an amendment plan, which I believe I got this number from, for the 51% open spaces, which is
So we should,
the allow.
51% is what the PDR at the time was approved for.
I would say it would be in that neighborhood.
Okay. And then I also want to understand your comment of, I think I figured it out. So the comment was the 19 dwelling units per acre up to a maximum of 56 because there's almost 3 acres. So it's the 3 times 19, more or less.
Yes.
That's what that is. Okay.
Yes.
There was also a comment on the, so not only is this one needing to avoid essentially spot zoning, hence the ability to absorb the adjacent contiguous property. Now that then becomes the case also for the PDC, and you are attaching that to the property, commercial property to the south. A road is allowed to split a contiguous definition?
Yes, the code is very specific about it, that right-of-way can intersect a zone district that needs to meet its minimum 180,000 square feet.
Okay. And then I think trying to see if these are questions I should ask you or the applicant. I'll hold them for the applicant.
Okay.
I have one more question, Andrea. Page 1 of the general plan development plan, under site development and design standards A, talks about building heights, top of ridge, 3 or 4 stories. But then at the end, there's something curious. I'll quote, any variation from this maximum requires review and approval by the developer. The developer is approving his own changes and variations? Okay. It should be the city.
I'm sorry, I'm unable to read it. It's, does it clear, can you read it to me again?
Yeah, again, this maximum, any variation, it's part of the last sentence. Any variation from this maximum requires review and approval by the developer.
Yeah, I'm sorry, that is an error, and that will need to be, I would recommend that the board, if you're looking at recommending approval on this site, that you add a condition of approval that be eliminated.
And house, Fox,
Thank you.
et cetera. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, any more questions for Andrea?
Mark, where is that exactly?
See page 1 of the 6-page Riverside General Plan Development Plan. It's like in the center. Hang on. Can't cancel out here. There it is. In the center there, it says site development and design standards.
Okay, I got
A, building heights.
Yeah.
It's the tail end of that
Yep.
A.
Yeah, it's a good catch.
Where is it on here? Okay. Applicant? Thank you, Andrea.
Hi, my name is Brad Cushard. I'm with Central Development. We are the owner/developer of the proposed site. Andrea obviously did a very good job, and so you took a lot of my thunder because you said almost everything I want to say. So I'll probably hit on some of the stuff again that she said, just to reiterate and go into some additional detail. I have most of our consultants here with us today as well, so to the extent we have questions that perhaps I can't ask to get into more technical details, I don't know how you want to do procedurally, but we can bring them up to discuss. Is that better? Yes. Oh, good. Okay, so we already discussed the site location. Let me see if I can pull up. So, while not 100% relevant to this immediate discussion, because this is an end product that we intend to build and not necessarily a zoning discussion, I'd like to have that up because that is what we intend to build. As we all know, the location of the site is at the 5,000 block of South Prince Street. We're seeking a rezone from PDC to PDR, and through our review and consultation with the city, we have determined that there is a process for this, and part of this process is if there is a change in conditions, that a rezone can be asked for. And what we did as we looked at this site and thought, well, why does a rezone applicable here in this case. And so what we looked at was the site was zoned in the 1980s to PDC, and it sat obviously vacant for a long time. It's currently still vacant. In the last building cycle, Walgreens came and built a retail pad on the corner of Bellevue and South Prince Street. And as a result of that, it essentially cut off the rest of the site from any future commercial uses. The Prince Street dead ends, number one, and so you don't drive traffic down the street. Number two, you don't have access anymore off Bellevue because, again, the Walgreens took that access. So any retailers who want to be in the area would not want to be on this site because there is no traffic driven to it. There is no visibility. Couple that with the fact that in the last cycle, there's been quite a bit of new retail developed in the area, Riverside Downs as an example, the King Soopers redevelopment as another example. There's lots of new good retail here in Littleton and in this specific area. And what I think this site needs more than anything is to have people driven to the existing retail. With the proposed 56 units, you could assume at least 2 people per household. It's 112 more people that are going to go to the Walgreens, they're going to go to Riverside Downs, they're going to go to the King Soopers and drive tax base that way. And so even though we are effectively downzoning the site, we are upzoning, in essence, what the economics are to the city of Littleton. So a little more about our development. Andre talked a little bit about our interior corridors, and I'd like to pull that up. Well, I'm not going to find what I want right now, but this project is planned for four-sided architecture. What that means is, as you drive into the site, as Andrew discussed, the front of the units on the river will be on the river. The front of the units on Prince Street will be on Prince Street. And one of the concerns the city had was, well, what about the rest of the units? What does everybody else get? Are you going to walk in and drive into this facility and see gross garbage cans and dilapidated garage doors and just, the rear end of all these buildings? And we are not doing that. And I thought I had a picture here, which I don't seem to have. We have four-side architecture. We're going to have glass frosted garage doors. We have brick on the alleyways of the sites. We have corrugated metal on the alleyways of the sites. So we brought the good architecture from the front around the side. So as you enter the site, obviously the front of the unit on the river is on the river. We don't drive up to the site that direction. You're going to drive up to the site from effectively the back side. So what we wanted to give people was the feel of still being at a nice development. So in this case, as you drive up, there's going to be potted plants. There's going to be the frosted glass garage doors, not dented old painted garage doors, and then brick and patios in the back of the site. Can you find it? That'd be great if you can find it, one of them. Oh, here you go. So here you go. Here's the picture that I was referring to. So as you drive into the site here, this is the view you have at the back of the site. So clearly, the goal here is not to develop the least expensive product and trying to get something passed and move on. The goal of this is to have four-side architecture that the city can be proud of, the community can be proud of, because this is effectively a community-minded development. That's the goal of this. Can Littleton be proud of this? Can the people who live here be proud of this? And will it withstand the test of time? And I think we have achieved that with this look. Another conversation that was discussed here briefly was densities. So I brought a matrix that we can look at of the handful of projects that have been approved in Littleton in the recent past. And as you can see, the Plat 56 development is approximately 18.48 units per acre, whereas the rest of the projects recently built here are significantly above that. Aspen Grove, which is obviously further south, a little more suburban, is in the low end at 16.48, but the high end, the Nevada Street condos, are almost up to 40. So as far as the density goes, yes, it's more than what the PDC allows for. But in this case, it's much lower than what we see here in Littleton about what being developed. We think this is a very responsible development for this site, not over-densifying the site at all, at the same time making it enough that you have some mass and some community feel to it. Another thing we looked at as we went through this development was the citywide plan that Littleton had put together. Andrea obviously touched on it a little bit. The criteria were dynamic city, outdoor Littleton, connected Littleton, and distinctive Littleton. We took that in and said, well, how can we meet all these characteristics and achieve something that is going to be well received by the city of Littleton? Under the first category of dynamic city, we are providing direct access for the residents to both the trail, the river, downtown, and the retail. So it's a very well-connected site. I know one of the members brought up the issue of crossing over on Bellevue and what can be done to help alleviate that short light cycle. What we have done when we go down there, which is absolutely fantastic, is we go down the Crusher Fines Trail to the main bike trail and walk right to Riverside Downs. And it is fantastic, because you guys know there's a Starbucks, there's 24-hour fitness, there's a couple pubs and restaurants down there, and the ability to walk to go grab dinner or a haircut or go to the gym is great. And so I think maybe that is a concern, but at the same time, I think you're going to find that a lot of the traffic, especially the foot and bike traffic, is going to go along the bike trail and go the back door Riverside Downs. Outdoor Littleton, obviously that one is easy to describe. We are on the river. Our goal is to bring the river into the site and bring the people to the river. And I heard a conversation earlier about we have code required indoor or outdoor space in our site, open space, but maybe not as much as the current PDC allows, or the current PDC allows for. And we think that we have plenty of outdoor living space, open space in the site. What is not included, and Andrea can correct me if I'm wrong, are the rooftop decks. That's not something that is included in the calculations, but yet we have those. So we do have additional outdoor space, not just the code required, but others that the code doesn't necessarily look at, but also provides people the ability to get out of their actual units, on top of the roofs, on their patios. Again, you can take the bike path, walk down to the river. So there's lots of ability here for people to go out to the river and get out of their apartments, or out of their townhomes in this case. Connected Littleton, obviously centrally located to numerous modes of transportation and retail. The light rail is less than a mile away, and it's a great location, being that it's right next to Bellevue, so people can both walk to the grocery store, to restaurants, to pretty much anything they ever needed. At the same time, if they wanted to get on a light rail, go downtown, it's simple. You can even ride your bike downtown. We did it as an exercise. It's a mile, but a mile is really close on a bike, and we found that was something that I think people will do as well. The final category was distinctive Littleton, and what this kind of touches back to my four-sided architecture point. We are not proposing a development that looks good from the front, and yet as you enter the site in the back, all you see is garbage cans. This is, again, four-sided architecture. What you see in the front, you see in the back. The idea is to make it as nice looking as possible. And another thing that we did in order to have the most success here and get the Littleton residents involved is that my partner started attending some of the local community meetings, and we did a few things. One, we met with and have support of all the adjacent property owners that surround our site. Two, we met with members of the community and we worked hard to garner their support. We walked through our project with them. We showed them, what we intend to do. We listened to their concerns, discussed how things, could be changed if there's any issues. And in fact, my partner, in fact, continues to meet with members of Littleton to confirm and, hopefully garner their support, because this is really, truly a community development, and without the support of the community, it makes it more difficult for everybody. And I think we've done a lot of work to get that support. I think we have it. So that's it for my basic prepared remarks. I mean, I'm here to answer your questions, and I have my consultants here as well.
Thank you. Any questions? Kurt.
Ingress, egress, there's the one ingress, egress, and there's also an emergency on the north side, is that right?
Yes. So we will have a Knox box on a chain, and so in the instance that there is an emergency that requires fire department, they essentially either unlock it with a key that they have, or they can go through the chain if they need to. So that is the emergency access point for the site.
But the rest is all through the one.
Correct.
One egress point. Are you building this project or this product anywhere else in the city right now?
We are not.
You know what your typical square footage?
Yes, we are looking on about 1,700 square feet, total square footage on
Price
average.
point, guesstimate?
Pardon?
Do you have a price point?
Price point started in the upper 300s, going into the mid 500s. So, from a marketing standpoint, we want to be this as cost effective as possible. I understand that that is not the cheapest prices of housing in the metro area, but given the fact that this is on the river, it is competitively priced, and relative to things you see, downtown Denver as an example, it's an utter bargain. But our goal is to make it as cost effective as possible, because then they sell, which is the end all goal.
Bruce?
So talk a little bit about the floodplain and drainage mitigation issues as they exist on the site, if you could.
May I bring up the civil engineer to discuss that? Introduce yourself.
Dan Watson. I'm with Redland. It's located in Littleton. So the site is currently, per the current flood insurance rate map, we are not in a flood zone on this site. And
Okay, interesting. What would, given the proximity to the river, can you explain why that would be the case?
the elevation difference between the river up to the site.
Interesting.
What I
Okay.
would assume, so.
So, short answers are good too. All right, thanks. The other question I was going to ask then was the whole own versus rent issue. I'm curious I am enthusiastic about the product, given again that the community's been looking for owner occupied for a while, and it's been hard to find. But you guys are well versed, it sounds like, in the issues and at the state level. So what's driving this? How did you decide to make this owner occupied versus rental property?
Well, exactly to your point, there isn't any for sale product being built. I mean, I know that's an exaggeration, obviously, but the majority of the product being built is residential, and there's obviously lots of reasons for that. Money in Los Angeles and Manhattan, they read the newspaper and it says build apartments, and so everybody builds apartments, think that's what you have to do. Now, in Colorado, we have the additional complication of the homeowner associations and the trial attorneys who get their hands on those things and, threaten lawsuits. So what we are doing effectively is eliminating the HOA. We will not have an HOA in this site. We still do have CC&Rs, covenants that control people can do, so you cannot simply, paint your house Bronco orange one day because, that's the color you like. So you will not be allowed to do that. The CC&Rs will protect the other residents from that, but each unit you're looking at will have its own separate lot and legal description. You will own everything from wall to wall up to the ceiling. The roofs themselves are separately partitioned. So if your roof is damaged or you want to replace your roof because you feel like it, you can replace your roof without any impact on your adjacent property owners.
Okay. All right. Good. That's it for me. Thank you.
Lynn?
How will you handle the internal fees, such as snow removal and yard work and things like that?
That is also handled in the CC&Rs. There will be fees paid into it, and there'll be a property management company that will handle all that.
Okay.
Will there be any community or rec center, any sort of central amenity for the property?
There will not be a central amenity. We view the river and the surrounding retail as our central amenity, and we also view our open space with the rooftop decks and our patios as our rooftop amenities. And as you can see from this elevation here with the colored etched concrete with the scoring of it and the four-side architecture, we think the whole place is going to be inviting and going to have sufficient open space.
I'd say probably 6 or 7 times you talk about repeatedly frosted glass doors and colored concrete drives. I'll paraphrase, fostering community interaction. I fail to see how that fosters frosted colored doors fosters community interaction. Can you give me a justification for that?
Yeah, I mean, if I said community interaction, I don't think that those by themselves create community interaction. I think what they do is promote a development that people want to be, and also not have anybody looking at the backside of sites. Four-sided architecture is simply a way of enhancing the development, not necessarily to bring people out there.
So it's a matter of looks, not community. It's a matter of looks, not community interaction.
Yeah, I agree.
In itself, but you continue to mention it in the write-ups here. Could you justify your reason behind asking for 25% open space versus you're piggybacking onto Riverside Apartments with a 51% open space, and the current zoning of the lot in force, legal, right now, is 65%. Please justify.
Sure. So the couple things. One is the current zoning, if you would do a PDR, allows for 25% open space, so it does meet that minimum. Your point is well-founded that the site to the north is higher, as is the current zoning of this site is higher. But what we're saying here is really the open space is the river. It's the trail system. That's the open space. Sure, would it be nice to have a 2-acre park inside this site? Sure, that'd be fantastic. But what's more important, having that internal in the site or bringing the river to the people? And that's what we're really doing here. We view the river is our open space. And also, even though the code does not consider these rooftop decks open space, which is a code issue, they're open space. You can go up on your rooftop deck and enjoy the whole world up there. You have mountain views to the west, you have river views to the east, and I don't think we at all are shortchanging the community or the zone district by requesting 25%, which is currently allowed in these zone districts.
I would give you points for the open decks, but without the river, you have absolutely no amenities, no outdoor amenities whatsoever.
No, we don't have, Justin, do you want to come speak on what we did here in order to promote?
Yeah. Yeah, good evening. Justin Hay with Stack Lot, 5639 South Curtis. So I've been focusing and helping our team here, locally, just with the landscape architecture, and obviously helping also with some of these comments on the citywide plan and discussing comp plan, and maybe just to back out a little bit to give a little bit more context on really kind of the demographic that is seeking this type of community is more so kind of upwardly mobile in the product that they're looking for. I think that when you look at traditional apartments, like the apartment complex to the north, there is a plethora of additional open space that serves kind of more of a rental apartment user that looks for specific amenities and maybe that strata layer of user. This product type is servicing more active users that love to kind of get out of their own immediate, not just their own four walls, but even outside of just their immediate community that they're in and recreate. So I think just to expand on, why we localized a lot of the amenities to the patio areas. These are homeowners. These are going to be homeowners that kind of need some enclosure adjacent to their immediate house, which is, these ground floor patios that are going to have different options, whether you put a small, outdoor fire pit, or you could have, a small water feature, things of that nature that kind of cater to each user, but are, obviously controlled under some of the guidelines we discussed. So to start immediately on the ground plane, each unit are going to have these enclosures that are both porous in nature, depending on where you are on the site. You can see in this view, we're talking about kind of these internal views that you can see out where we have more landscape, and filter views where you may be facing another unit. So you might have, more of a solid screen wall that's constructed of similar materials. So first we have those systems, and then we mentioned the rooftop decks. A lot of these users are, again, they like to kind of recreate and kind of see the views of the area, which are immense when you get up to the heights that we're looking at, as well as kind of the river access. And so we have areas where we're taking the opportunity of taking our drainage, and these are not detention ponds, these are actually filter ponds, so they're very shallow systems where we're going to, for this example here, proposing a boardwalk system, and just have some really simplistic, low maintenance grasses and other things that are controlled, but still kind of provide a little bit of the pulling in some of the naturalistic qualities of the riparian nature of Platte. So some of those features are really, just captivating the connection to the river that is the ultimate amenity to the greater region. So, and then Brad mentioned some of the interior courts. There's a lot of great things being done with alley systems, and where you actually are bringing program into the interior of driveways, where driveways aren't just, for vehicles. This is going to be a very, low traveled area. We don't have really anybody outside of visitors and residents driving through here. So the idea is that, these are kind of interior plaza spaces that can be utilized for, community events, or, there's some of those dead end areas that you can program or have opportune, events out in those areas. So we're not putting asphalt there. We're treating it with patterning and concrete systems that are going to vary. And so it's really going to, be this system that speaks to one of those users that really aren't looking for, just an open green when there is, quite a few hundred acres of that available to them just right out their front door. So, and I think also just to add to that is really the character of this infill site. It's a suburban infill site, but it is such an opportunity in this area to really, as Brad and others have been mentioning, just really kind of revitalize and be a great catalyst to this portion of the community, especially just the adjacent retail, and we have storage and industrial to the other side. So I think this really starts to speak to a broader piece than just whether or not there's a pool and a community center in the middle of this. So that's kind of where we were going with the overall design.
Anything else?
No.
So, that is very similar to what you see in Stapleton. So a lot of the engagement in Stapleton is in the, the driveway, and that's where the community gathering happens. So I have seen that. I do agree the rooftops add that element of outdoor space that actually is, I would say it's going to be one of the key selling points of these properties. So I do like that. So then let's talk about the rooftop deck, because while we're, you're giving, or you're taking away from the unobstructed open space, you're actually going higher. So the question here is, how do you justify the height? Because the original PDR and what we see at Riverside Apartments is 45 feet. If I was to look at, zoning for multifamily, there's a height of 30 feet. So you are asking for essentially an exception and for greater building height. Can you give us some justification around that?
Sure, and I don't want to speak too heavily for our architect, which isn't, I don't think he's here tonight, but do you want to discuss that a little bit more?
Okay. Yeah, sure. So I think what we're doing here is we do not have residential neighbors that we're blocking views from. And I think that's the primary reason why we're going a little bit higher with this development, to give people those views, the mountains. What we're looking at here is the interior units that we're looking at are going to be the tallest units. Those are the units that we want to try to get them involved with its natural surroundings, both in terms of the river and in terms of the mountains. That's the goal. If there was, other houses around that maybe you're obstructing views, I could see that as an argument, but we're not obstructing anybody's views here, and I'm not sure if it's a hardship. It's a benefit, certainly, to the interior units. We're trying to give everybody at this development a reason to be here, not just the guys who have the immediate mountain views here on Prince Street or the people in the back that have the great views of the river. We want the people in the center to also be involved as well.
So those fronting Prince Street and those fronting the river will be 3-story and 48 feet?
Yes, effectively, yes.
What percentage then of the buildings will be 4 feet versus 3? Do you have a sense of that?
Yeah. Smart one if you got it. Let's play some chess.
So sorry about that. So 27 of the 56 are the 3-story units that are either on the Prince Street or on the river. The remainder of the units are the interior units, and not all of those are going to be 4-story units. Some of them are actually ground floor living units that will be shorter, but approximately half.
And the 4 is, I see rooftop decks just in the central area.
Correct.
Let me just see if I have any more questions. The parking for, so 2.28 is what's requested for the parking ratio. You talked about 2 spaces for a parking garage, so where would the visitors park?
So we have, as Andres described, 0.28 parking spots. Can someone get up here and make the screen go back? Because we really need a site plan. And go to additional information. Let's see if that's good. Nope. Can you zoom in there? That doesn't have the parking on it either.
Oh, we have here.
Oh, there you go.
Parking.
Okay,
Surface
so
parking.
there you go.
Surface parking here, there's 8, 3, 3. So
And-
it's really on the interior.
And then there's some up here as well. There's another 2 parking spots there. So they're kind of mixed around the site, and the purpose for that obviously is that you want to, if you're a guest, you want to park near where your friend might be.
Okay. And I'm actually going to go back to the discussion on open space. What I couldn't understand in the table, Andrea, was the comparison of the setbacks for Riverside Apartment versus Plat 56. So for Plat 56, the east setback is, so east meaning abutting the river and the trail, that's 8 feet. And I'm trying to understand what the setback is for Riverside Apartments or the previous PDR for comparison. Do you have, whoever can answer it?
Do you know the exact number?
Okay, so as I understand it, you're looking at the Riverside Apartments and the setback requirements. So this is taken directly from the GPDP, and the setback is 20 feet to the right-of-way. Now, in this case, the Riverside Apartments are really just adjacent to that dead end on South Prince Street. Okay, so it's 20-foot setback from that right-of-way and 5 feet side and rear, and so that would pertain to the perimeter of the lot, as the Riverside Apartments is one very large, well, a couple of large lots, one for the ring access road that runs internally to it, and one for the apartment buildings that sit around that ring road. And then there's also a requirement for a 15-foot separation between the buildings.
Okay, so if I was to specifically ask, what is the setback from the river for Riverside Apartments? I guess where would you start counting, and what is that number?
Yes, so that would be 8 feet from the property line.
And the property, okay, so 8 feet setback from the property line, and in this case, for Platt, it would also be 8 feet, so they would be the same? Am I understanding that correctly?
For the Platt, you mean for the Riverside Apartments and the Platt 56? Is that your question? Mm-hmm. Yes, so the Riverside Apartments don't actually have an east setback, so it would be 5 feet for the Riverside Apartments.
Okay, that's what I was asking. So
yeah.
If it was documented, if I was to go measure it, let me ask it that way. Mm-hmm. If I was to go measure the lot line to the setback for the Riverside Apartments on the east side, mm-hmm. It would be 5 feet.
Well, the 5 foot is a requirement. Now, the actual setback may be greater than that. Having been out on the site, I'm guessing that may be the case.
But you don't know what that is?
I don't know what that is offhand.
And here, for
Karina, what might help us, and maybe I can have Justin walk you through this.
Okay.
The chart we have up here behind you shows the relationship of Riverside Downs, Greenleaf Apartments, and our proposed project to the river.
Great.
With a dimension.
Thank you.
So Justin, can you give up and walk her through this?
Yeah. So, and Greenleaf is Riverside to the north, just so that's the ownership, just so we don't get that confused. But essentially what we did here, just to do a quick study just regarding the setbacks here. Let me just try to zoom in up here. I'm trying to get, so, sorry here, just trying to get my bearings here. So really we just did kind of some cuts at really the closest kind of, this is Riverside Downs. We just wanted to look at kind of three of the parcels, you know, that have significance in some nature to our site. And Riverside Downs here, you know, as you guys just obviously went through the process of getting that park approved there, we just wanted to look at river relationships, not based on setbacks, but then kind of come back and look contextually what development is looking like along the corridor here. So that's really what's represented here. And you can kind of see the relationship from kind of river edge to trail, and then Riverside Downs has a kind of subsequent trail, and then obviously density is different, you know, whether it's retail or single story. So here you can kind of see we're at, I believe, about 113 feet, just to give reference, which they're obviously set back further from a commercial standpoint. But then the adjacent Riverside Apartments to the north, we took it's the furthermost southeast building, same kind of distance. We're in relationship, we're this was 102 feet to the property line, and then I believe what we were just mentioning, Andrea, was the 8-foot setback, and this just shows the actual relationship to the building to property line. There's variation along that whole frontage, as you know, as you travel along there, but it's just the furthest south building. And then as you look on what kind of our density and our footprint, our vertical footprint is looking at, we're, you know, with the covered patios, et cetera, we're about that 102 feet. And I am showing, we do have some grade variation that we're going to do a small, 36 to 40 foot retaining wall there, kind of waist height wall along the edge. What's that? Oh, I'm sorry, inch. Thank you. It's been a long day, let me tell you. So this kind of shows that, again, that river relationship. And, we do have some variation in topo in this cross section. But yeah, this kind of gives that relationship to the river as well here, just conceptually speaking, so you guys can have that in your mind as you're discussing setbacks as well. And I believe we have a easement, utility easement that's running along the back as well, that's going to prohibit some of the things along there from trees and things, but we're getting kind of creative back there a little bit, so.
That was helpful. Can you show the view with all three of them?
Sure. And I put the canoe in our view, showing some activity down there. Not saying it doesn't happen in other areas. They were just floating by our site when we did this section.
At least you didn't show any abandoned cars or anything in the other.
Right, no abandoned cars. There's some tents there on our site too, if you haven't seen that.
So the middle one, the green leaf, so the gravel trail, the walking trail, I guess, yeah.
Correct. This is the actual Mary Carter Regional Trail. Mm-hmm. And then there's an existing decomposed granite trail here that's.
Yep. So in the case of Plat 56, you will be closer to the gravel trail versus in Greenleaf Apartments, you're much further from that trail. And I've noticed that because I run on there and it's, yeah, and it winds.
It varies. I think right where we took this section is where there's variation, and yes, it peels off.
The point is you are closer to the gravel trail. You may not be necessarily closer to the bike trail. It's hard to tell. But there's definitely a difference in the experience of those consuming the trail, at least the gravel trail, that they are closer to a building. Okay.
Yes.
And your 25% open space, I believe you said much of that was concentrated along the east side, or maybe I'm making that assumption. I'd like to understand how much of that 25% open space, how is it distributed across the lot?
Let's see if we can, do we have that illustrative? Where would that? Is it? Oh, it's in here. Great. Let's see if we can find a graphic here that'll speak to that. There we go, maybe.
Really?
So I would say it's pretty evenly dispersed around the buildings. I mean, if we start here on the north, and I mean, I think just because we've been flying around so high, it's good to kind of get in here a little bit. I mean, on the north side, you can see this little aperture here in this building. I showed that view earlier of the boardwalk and kind of the naturalistic area. So I would say, just to answer your question more bluntly, it's fairly even dispersed around each building with the private patios and the relationships of the edges around it. Certainly, how we laid this out in landscape is, we really wanted this to feel along Prince Street and these patios a little stoop-like, a little bit more urban and street presence. So, this really kind of has that interplay along there. I think you saw in the perspective. And then on the south, this drainage way, which we're working through right now, just really kind of feels like a more manicured extension of that. And then the river edge, we wanted really these patios and to sit just a few feet up, as I mentioned, not 36 feet, but 3 feet or so up, and have a little bit of a relationship that's not obtrusive and doesn't just try to blend exactly, that we're letting kind of the river edge kind of come up to the site, and that we may have these access points here that are gentle down to the trail and here. And then these kind of open areas are really, part of the corner patios, and then also just kind of open green areas. And we are, as we get, I mentioned these screen wall systems in the middle that, you don't want to be looking when you're sitting down directly at your neighbor at, 9 in the morning, drinking a cup of coffee all the time. So some of those are going to be a little bit more privatized here on the interior, so.
Okay, that helps, thank you.
Yeah.
I have one follow-up question. In the general plan, development plan, we need to think of a better name than that, but God.
GPDP.
Yeah, the GPDP. Does it specifically say that the units facing Prince Street and the river will be 3 stories, and only the center units can be 4 stories? Or is it open to your interpretation down the road?
I do not believe it says that specifically, no. So it'd be open to, in theory, someone could do up to the maximum height allowed.
So you could have 4 stories along the river?
I believe so.
Yes.
Andre, is that how you read it too?
Okay.
Yes, and I think earlier it was mentioned why we kind of provided more of the height in the middle and then the transition towards the edges for just views and edge impact, if you will, to the adjacent uses, so.
Andrea, in the past, Mary Carter Greenway, Platte River Corridor, whatever it's called, they're quite selective as to how many access points they allow. Is there any problem in the access points proposed by this development into the corridor?
We have referred the project to South Suburban Parks and Recreation, as well as the Colorado Land Board, which owns a strip of the western portion of the corridor. And South Suburban Parks and Recreation is willing to work with the applicant on access to the trail. That would be further evaluated at the time of site development plan.
Okay.
Andrea, don't get comfortable. The one follow-up question that I have, if these properties, for whatever reason, we've seen this happen before here in Littleton, they were intended to be for sale, the market changed, what would be the process if these, instead of being for sale units, became apartment or for rent? Can that happen, or would it have to come back to the board?
Yes, that could happen. It would not involve any city review. And just like anyone can rent out their house or their townhome if they own it, in this development, it would be the same thing. In fact, all of them could be owner-occupied or rental. It's really all about it's about the site planning and all that goes into the zoning with the GPDP.
May I speak to that as well?
Of course.
So in practice, it's not a concern, and here's why. As we go build this project out in 4 phases, which is our intent, once we sell 1, 2, 3, 4 of them, it's no longer a viable apartment complex, as an example. And the reason why that is institutional investors need a whole apartment complex, not 80% of an apartment complex. If you have 80% of an apartment complex, you can't get debt financing for it, and it just can't occur. So can each one of these units individually be rented out without further city approval? I think the answer to that is yes. But will this become a apartment complex regardless of what happens to the economy? I think the answer to that is almost 100% no. It just wouldn't work.
Go ahead.
Technically, I think it's more of a legal question. The parallel project that you may be thinking of is the
Nevada.
Aspen Grove Apartments, which were...
And Nevada Place was the case as well.
Yeah, well, all right, and that's, the first one was, yeah. The second one was apartments, I think, all along. But anyway, the Aspen Grove project was originally a project by McStain that was supposed to be townhomes, and it got rezoned, and then McStain went out of business in 2008, with the downturn or '09, and it never was built as that, and instead it was built as apartments, which coincidentally was okay in terms of the zoning. But the way it was explained to me was that if you can't really do that because it constitutes a taking, that if you say you can only build one type of product on this parcel, or if you don't build it, it reverts.
I can help you. So in our zoning code, the issue here is about multifamily residential units. Our code does not call out whether it is for sale or rental.
Yeah.
It's the use of multifamily. That's what you're discussing. That's the use, residential multifamily.
Yeah, technically.
So technically, it can. You're saying it's not financially viable that it would?
I guess my point would be once one or two or three of these sells, it becomes extremely difficult for that to occur because you need the whole complex, not just part of it. It's just too complex. Now, if there's something really bad happens and the economy just goes in the tank tomorrow and it doesn't get built, then the zoning in place would allow for, I guess, for sale or for rent product.
So a scenario could in fact be that you build 3 of these, you sell them, you don't build the other 8, and the other 8 could be built as an apartments.
I think that wouldn't work either because, again, the site, we have a 3-acre site, and if we built 3 buildings and then stopped building because the economy took a tank and some other developer came in, they would have to build our approved site plan unless they wanted to go back through the city and change our site plan. And then 2, they're going to have an apartment complex on the same lot as our townhomes. And again, from a function standpoint with institutional money, it would be a hot potato. It would not be something that I think is a likelihood. I mean, anything's possible. I don't want to give a 100% answer here, but I think from an institutional standpoint, that concern is probably about 1% of that ever happening.
I'm remembering Nevada Place, and Nevada Place, this is in fact what happened, that it was first present, you guys, correct me if you remember.
But the issue around
What's the
zoning
difference?
code, the City of Littleton zoning code, it's about the use. So when we're talking about multifamily residential, that's the use that we're talking about and contemplating. For purposes of zoning and what you have in front of you for rezoning, that's
Saying I should be considering this just on multi-use, not whether it's for sale or for rent.
based on our zoning code. That is how it's laid out, yes.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, thank you. We'll now open it up to public. Do I have a list? Okay, Paul, you're up first.
Good evening, Board. My name is Paul Bingham, 236 West Delaware Circle. I'd like to speak in support of this project. I've been to the site, looked it over, walked it, reviewed the plans. The planning staff recommends it. I think it's a rational plan. It conforms to the city code. It provides owner-occupied housing, which is one of the things that was just mentioned Littleton is needing. It fits on the site, certainly with the north part. The east part is industrial. It fits with that. It doesn't mess up anybody's sight lines to the mountains or anything like that. It provides some nice viewpoints from these residents themselves. I've got a bunch of stuff to say here, but it's all been said. I agree with it. I certainly agree with Andrea Mimnaw's analysis of the whole thing, and would simply like to say, please vote to approve this. It seems like a very, very rational thing to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. John Becker.
Hi there. I live in the Riverside Apartments just to the north of this. I've been in that complex for about 7 years. And I have no issues with this in and of itself. I think it's great. I think the renegade parking that was mentioned would have some impact on me. It's not really these people's problems or your problem. It's more Greenleaf, who owns the apartment complex. They haven't really allowed good guest parking access. So that's my only concern, but it's not really, I don't think, a problem of this project. I would welcome it. I think it would be a nice looking development right there, and I think it's a great place to live, and I'm sure people would enjoy living there just as I do. So
Thank you.
Thanks.
Pam Chadbourne.
Good evening, Planning Commission. I'm certainly not organized, but let me see to try to say a few things. I think the commission members have brought up many good points. So I am concerned about emergency access as well. And when Paul mentions the view, what about the view from the trail? So I walk on the trail, and boy, these things would totally spoil the view. There's no through view anywhere in this complex. There's stuff everywhere, and you can't see through it. I wanted to say that I really don't know how to evaluate this, because although the staff report says it meets all requirements, our requirements are inadequate, and I've said this before. So what we don't get is the city impact of this. We are not built out. I've heard members of this commission say we're built out. We are not. And this is proof of it. We do have stuff on most of our sites, but it is not the maximum that can be on those sites. And let me just remind you that Columbine Square is right down the road, and it applied for 340 apartments at Bellevue and Federal. So where in the staff report is the integrated impact of the possible building that can happen along Bellevue and Federal in the coming years? That's the important thing to evaluate, and that hasn't been presented at all. We don't know what the impact is. Now, I would say of uses here, of all the places that the Planning Commission and City Council changed from commercial to residential, this is probably one of the better parcels. But the density is too great. And there is no way, I walk along there, and there's no way that the existing apartments are as close to the river or the path as these are proposed to be. These crowd the river, these crowd the path, they crowd each other. Those sets of 8 or 10 that face up against each other, I don't regard that as $500,000 property or $300,000 property. Remember that the zoning goes with the parcel, and that if these guys don't get to build what they want, or I think Commissioner Elrod brings up a very pertinent point, what if it's done in phases and something doesn't get built and is sold later, as happened at Nevada Place? These guys have great plans, but the next guys may not. So in what they're bringing in, the violation of open space, the violation of height maximums for multifamily, it's almost as though there was nothing there, so let's go for broke. Let's not go for broke, Planning Commission. Let's size this down. It's a good idea to change from commercial to residential, but size it down. And thank you for all the points that you made.
Thank you. Carol.
I'm Carol Brezak. I live in the 4th District. I, too, have walked the site and met with the developer. And it's interesting what's happened over a course of time in dealing with Planning Commission, Board Commission, and seeing developments come and go in Littleton and applications come before you and be withdrawn, and things get built without even coming to you. And so it creates a point of view from my perspective that when I see something like this, it's like, whoa. It's not the Grove. It's not 6 stories high. It's not packed in. And this looks good. And I support it. And I support it for a couple of reasons. Well, more than that. Parking. They meet the parking requirement. When's the last time we saw somebody meet the parking requirement? And the owner occupied. I love the idea of owner occupied, and these guys have the gumption to build it. So power to them. But I support it most of all because of what it is not. I don't think it hurts Littleton. I think it's a product we need in Littleton. It's not a place I would live, but I don't expect you to build or anybody to build just what I like to live. This is the diverse property or product that has been talked about, that has been needed. And as I talk to my own children who are older than I like to admit, this is kind of more up their alley. They don't like to stay home the way I do. They don't like to recreate in their backyard. They don't want a backyard to take care of, but they can afford something like this, and it gives them the freedom to go and come as they choose without concern about the things that make me happy in my home. So I say go for it. Approve it. I think this has been a very interesting hearing. I appreciated all the comments from the Planning Commission and the work. I thought Andrea did a great job of presenting the product. So I'd like to see this one approved. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Anybody else from the public would like to speak? No. Okay, so then we'll close the public hearing. All right, so we have shall we put a motion on the table and then I'll open it up to discussion?
I make a motion to approve Planning Board Resolution number 22-A-2016, which forwards a favorable recommendation to City Council.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Point of order, they wanted to make the modification.
I'd like
The wording.
to propose two amendments.
There you go.
First one being that page 1 of the general plan, development plan be corrected when it refers to developer. Secondly,
You're doing one at a time.
say?
You want to do one at a time so we can vote on it?
Okay, on a separate amendment.
I'll second
let-
the first one.
I'm sorry?
I'll second the first one.
So we have a motion on the table to approve resolution number 22-2016 amended for correction to page 1 statement that says requires building height. The maximum allowed height for a 3-story structure shall be, et cetera, to the top of the roof ridge. Any variation from this maximum required review and approval by the developer should change to by the
City. Okay,
so that's what we're voting on now,
Just the amendment.
just the amendment.
Could I offer my second amendment, or should I wait?
I think we should vote on this amendment first. Yep.
Vote on the first amendment.
Any discussion?
No. Okay.
It's an easy one.
So the vote for the First Amendment is unanimous and it passes.
Thank you.
Now,
Second amendment.
second amendment, that 4-story units be prohibited, let's say 4 stories units, including rooftop decks, be prohibited facing the river corridor and Prince Street.
So you're centralizing the 4-story units.
So if for some reason he doesn't do it, all the 4-story units stay in the middle.
Do you mean facing or adjacent?
Sorry?
Because in theory, they all kind of face it.
They're-
So you mean adjacent, so
Okay, adjacent,
the
that's right.
buildings adjacent
Thank you.
to
Make
the
that change.
river side and then the Prince
Yeah.
Street side.
Adjacent to the river corridor and Prince Street.
So the statement, the amendment is that 4-story units be prohibited from,
Or maybe, I have a suggestion. Could we say that the buildings that face or are adjacent to Prince and the river are no more than 3 stories in height, and
Yes.
which include the rooftop deck?
And include what was the last part?
The rooftop deck.
Correct, including rooftop decks.
I think that will be clearer.
And so if there's, let me just clarify that. If there is a structure on the rooftop deck that needs to be within, does that need to be within the 48 feet, which we're saying is 3 stories?
38.
So 48 feet is what a 3-story unit is going to be.
No, I think that's the 4-story.
No, 4-story units are 52 feet.
Okay.
This says 38. What am I looking at?
Which one is that, Andrea?
Where are you seeing the 58?
No, 30, on page 5, it says maximum building height, 3-story units up to 38 feet. And
Page 10 says 48 feet.
it says 48 feet, so that's interesting. Yeah. What's your preference?
I have a feeling it's 48.
48 is pretty close to 52.
I believe it's, sorry, do I have my glasses?
Gotta be
I believe
38.
on the plan set it is 40.
48?
Let's see.
Are you guys asking us a question?
We want to know which one's the correct answer. Will the 3-story buildings be 38 feet or 48 feet? Who can answer that?
40, yes.
Yeah, 48 feet for the 3-story max height to the top of roof. And that was to allow the opportunity to get to a rooftop deck if you had a rooftop deck on a 3-story. Okay. Because you have to have the ability to get stairs and kind of a stairwell extrusion up to that level. So that's what that was, not full 38 or 48 feet for the, 3rd level, but that's why that height is essentially that.
So the 48 feet would include any structures that would be on the rooftop? No.
It would be, so the 48 feet is essentially the stairwell that pop, I know you guys have seen a few coming downtown Littleton here. It's just to get to the rooftop deck. So that's what the 48 feet on the 3-story is for. And then again, on the 4-story, the same on the 52 feet was because we're already utilizing the height of the 4-story in that scenario.
And the 38 feet that was here, would that be then truly just the 3-story that would not, or is that an error?
Can you tell me where you're seeing the?
Page 5?
Yeah. Page 5 of the staff report.
Oh, of the staff report.
Here it is.
3,
That would be 48, typo, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's
typo.
That's a disconnect there.
Yeah, okay.
To get to the, yeah.
So do we want to say 3 stories or 48 feet?
I think it's important that we specify the number of feet instead of stories. Do you agree?
Okay, I agree.
Okay, so I believe that the staff report does have a typo, and that what was meant to say was the 48 as reflected on sheet 1, the cover sheet of the GPDP.
Okay. So can someone restate, would you mind, Jocelyn or Denise, trying to restate what that amendment is?
I'll give it another shot.
The way I have it down now is no more than, for the properties that are adjacent to the river or Prince Street, that they be no more than 48 feet, including the rooftop deck. Right.
We just voted on.
I don't know that, what's that?
We just voted on having no rooftop decks on those. So
We just voted on having no rooftop decks. How do you, why are you saying that?
I included first no rooftop decks.
No, that was just changing a
That
technical
was
change on
a
the
technical
plan.
change.
That was just changing this. It said developer and should be saying city. We didn't do anything with the decks.
I think what we're trying to do here, I want to make sure we're clear. We want to ensure that the buildings that are on the east and the west are no more than 48 feet. That can include rooftop decks or not include rooftop. So I think it's irrelevant of the rooftop decks, what we're saying. What I believe we're trying to articulate is that it's a 3-story building not to exceed 48 feet. Potentially, what that also means is that they could have not have a rooftop deck and have a 2-story,
Okay.
a really high ceiling.
Basically, you're saying what it says on that cover sheet, right? You're saying that for those those buildings that are adjacent to Prince or the river, that it is 3 stories, not to exceed 48 feet.
Correct, but what that also will allow, I just want to make sure everyone's clear, what that also means is that if there is no rooftop deck, that building can be 48 feet of building.
Yes.
Okay.
So they work within that 48 feet period. Rooftop or not, that's the 48 foot is what they work within.
Correct. It could be a square building that goes up 48 feet.
Thank you.
Tuffy, okay.
Okay. I'm not sure if we're ready to vote. I don't know if that's what our intent was.
I don't think it was seconded.
Was it
somebody
second?
second that?
Yeah, we do need a second for that motion.
Who did?
We
No
don't
one
have
did.
one yet.
Second.
Okay.
When?
Okay, are we ready to vote? I don't know. I'm not, sorry, I haven't voted yet.
You want to have discussion?
I guess I'm a little concerned, yes, thank you. I do want a discussion, Bruce. I think there's something, I don't know that this is exactly what we're trying to get to, because we actually saw from the applicant, the intent of the rooftop decks was actually in the middle, and the Prince Street and the river did not have a rooftop deck, at least not in the illustrations. So I question then, do we really need for them to be 48 feet, or can they be lower? Because right now, what this is suggesting is that 48 feet is a building, not a portion of it, or meaning the full square footage of the building, as opposed to just the stairwell. So that is my concern here. So I would actually like to suggest that we do add back in the addition of the rooftop, so it would sound something like the building height is not to exceed 48 feet in cases or with the use of a rooftop. What I want to ensure is that if it doesn't have a rooftop, it shouldn't be 48 feet. What's the right statement, or how do we phrase that?
First, we have an amendment with a second that we need to vote on. I mean, we can have this discussion whether we want to do that.
That's
but
fair.
I would say if you want to limit it, 48 feet's too high, whether it has a deck or not. If you want to limit it, you should put it at 38 or 40 feet. 48 feet is 4 stories. You're not getting what you want. What you wanted was too much. What you're opposing is too much height on the exterior of the project. To change that, you want to get it down to 38 or 40 feet, a 3-story limit. Because 48 is no different than 52 when you're looking at it from the street. You won't notice the difference. So I would say the amendment that's on the table now, if you want to take it down and have no rooftop decks, then you should probably decline this one and then reestablish one with a 38 or 40-foot height limit and no rooftop decks.
Or an option is to just take this one off the table. You guys would have to agree to that.
I'll take it off the table.
Second.
Yeah, well, how do you do that? I think you have vote.
Do you want us to vote, or do you want us to just take it back off?
Vote it off, vote it down.
Need a second to withdraw.
Who seconded it? Lynn seconded it.
I rescind, if that's what the general feeling is.
Lynn, do you want to withdraw it?
Yes.
Okay.
Great.
So let's start again.
Let's start again.
So if you're starting over, you want to have, if you want to limit the exterior, then you want it down closer to 3 stories, 38 to 40 feet, or 42 feet maybe. Regardless, if you go to 48 feet, it's still going to look really large. And if your goal is to keep the exterior lower, then I would go to a...
So the intent is to keep the height lower along the river and the street. And the fact that the general plan, development plan didn't specifically state that the higher buildings would only be in the middle got me to do that amendment. That's my intent.
Right.
We can...
So what?
I would, my opinion is, I wouldn't do that. I think from the river, you're not going to notice that difference in 10 feet anyway, because you're already down here, however many feet it was from the river, from the
I think you will
walkway.
notice it.
I think after 3 months of that being there, you wouldn't know the difference. If I were buying one of those units, I would want to have rooftop deck on the riverside. I'm not sure I'd want one on the
If they don't state it specifically, there will be a deck on every unit facing the river, because that's what everybody will want.
Yeah.
That's what they'll
So,
build.
I mean, I'd just say I'm against the change, so you make an amendment or make a motion.
What would typical 3-story, what would be the height of a 3-story building? Is it 30 feet?
I think 40 feet is
40 feet.
generous.
To the midpoint.
Well, Mark, do you want
Good point, I think, but they think the 48 was to the peak, is that correct?
Ridge line.
Ridge line, yeah. In Littleton, it's mostly to the midpoint of the roof.
And if they have a sloping roof on that exterior,
It said peak.
40.
It said peak in here.
If it says peak, if that's what you make your amendment to.
Well, I could finagle that. If you make it to the midpoint, I'll have a roof that starts really, and just zoom it up at a 45-degree angle and get what I want.
Yeah.
Wait,
So make sure it mentions peak if that's what you want.
Can you guys share where you're seeing the height in the GPDP stating that it's for the peak or not? What point are you guys arguing of where that's being measured?
I don't have mine.
You have it?
I don't know where it is. It's stated somewhere that's to the peak.
And Mark, are you saying that this could be developed without a peak and it's 48 feet to the top? So if there was no peak.
There was no roof peak, it could be, yes.
Okay. All right, so how do we?
On the GPDP, it does say that 4-story units are 52 feet maximum height to the top of roof. 3-story units, 48 feet maximum height to top of roof. That's on the GPDP.
This, for me, is an issue because the height has been discussed off and on through the entire discussion. And we've known what the height was going to be through the entire discussion. We've made no other calls to mitigate it. And mitigating it now is creating some confusion. So I guess what my concern is what is it we actually want out of that height? What is the end result we want? Not how to get there just now, but what is it we want?
What I heard that we want is buildings on the river and on Prince Street that would not exceed 48 feet with the inclusion of a rooftop, only with the inclusion of a rooftop. That's what I heard. That's what I'm hearing. What are you guys hearing?
Yes.
Mark's amendment.
That was my amendment originally. We tabled.
With the rooftop.
With the rooftop.
48 feet.
Okay, let's go back to that. Okay. So the amendment on the table is,
got withdrawn?
Well, we got
well, we're
withdrawn.
going to put the new one. I'm sorry, you want to make a motion for a new one?
I think I opened a can of worms. I'll let somebody else make the amendment.
All right, I'll try. I'd like to make an amendment. The amendment would be for buildings facing Prince Street, abutting to Prince Street and adjacent to the river, to be no more than 48 feet inclusive of a rooftop.
Deck.
Deck.
Second.
Okay.
So does that get us where we want to be? Does it avoid the issue of every unit having a deck?
No.
No.
That was the original issue, wasn't it? That there were decks on the Prince Street and the Riverside? Not necessarily the height.
No, but I don't think that was, the question was, is the issue that then we would have rooftops on every single building?
It's not realistic to expect them.
You opened this can, Mark.
I'm not sure what you're asking, quite frankly. Okay.
I thought your original issue was not having rooftop decks on the river and the Prince.
That is correct. That's what the amendment is saying.
No, it's not.
No, you're saying adjacent to the river and adjacent to Prince Street.
She said not to exceed 48
Not to
feet,
exceed 48
including
feet,
a rooftop deck.
Including rooftop.
Including. Okay. And I would prefer to say excluding the rooftop.
Then that would allow a 48-foot building adjacent to the river.
You have to do both. You have to limit the height and limit to no rooftop decks on properties adjacent to the river and to Prince Street. You have to, your amendment needs to have both of those issues in there.
Okay, so let's see. Did you?
And you
follow
have
that?
another amendment that needs to be withdrawn.
Go ahead.
All right, hold on, let me think. So,
They could have this built before we decide.
Not until we decide. I would say I'm against it either way. I'll just let you know, because I just don't think we need to be changing this at this
Well,
point in time
okay.
with all these issues, but go ahead.
So let's maybe ask you guys for clarification so we can get over this.
You have to reopen for public comment to do that.
Come on up.
We're asking the developer to clarify this information. Is that allowed?
Sorry, you have to close discussion and then reopen it for public comment.
Yes, you can't just.
You can't
Okay.
just ask, you can't just do that.
Okay, all right. So it's 8:33. I would like to open up for public comment again.
Yes.
Okay. Now we have a question. Initially, you stated 48 feet was for the 3-story units, and that includes the stairwell to the rooftop. But you also said that the buildings adjacent to South Prince and the river were not going to have rooftops, or you showed us a picture that it does not show a rooftop, and rooftops are only shown on the 4-story buildings. Can you clarify height and intent of rooftop, please?
So on page 1 of 7, under Site Development and Design Standards, Section A, specifically states building height. The maximum allowed height for a 3-story structure shall be 48 feet from finished grade to top of roof ridge. The maximum allowed building height for a 4-story structure, including a 3-story unit with a rooftop deck, shall be 52 feet from finished grade to top of roof ridge. And then we'll need to change that section, which says approved by developer, obviously. But
So where is that again?
Oh,
Where are you?
sorry. So
Very first page.
on page 1, if you see page 1 of the amendment document, do you have the amendment? Maybe I can bring it up.
Yes, second amendment to the RPDP, that document?
Yeah, let's see if I can bring it up here that we can look at it. Page, what's
I'll
1?
look for it while you do that.
Right there, page 1, and zoom in on it. Subsection A. So there's the section that I'm talking about, which describes in detail what is allowed.
Got it.
Can you, thank you for making it bigger.
Here,
So if you could,
you guys can read it.
Okay, so the maximum allowed height for a 3-story structure shall be 48 feet from finished grade to top of roof ridge. The maximum allowed height for a 4-story structure, including a 3-story unit with a 4th-story roof deck, shall be 52 feet from finished grade to top of roof ridge. Oh, interesting. So,
And so my architect, go ahead.
any variation from this maximum requires review and approval by the city, which we changed.
And that was what you guys, that was a typo there, the developer.
But are you saying that basically they're all 3-story units?
Right.
Some of them have decks?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. But the
Yes.
3-story unit
Okay.
is 48 feet.
And I do want to stress the graphic that illustrative, yes, it did show predominantly all the rooftop decks in the middle, and we did talk about the views, but not knowing kind of the detail yet and getting into the actual architecture, we may want to have some rooftop decks on some of the perimeter units as we get up there and actually look at view corridors and studies there, to where we may want to have rooftop decks along Prince and along the river, things of that nature. We didn't want to just say they're only in the interior 4 or 5 buildings and that's it. But the heights were written into that design standard based on a 3-story. But in order to get up to and have a stairwell extruding to the I mean, I guess you'd call it a rooftop, but it is kind of a 4th level, but it's not a bedroom in that scenario on the 3-story rooftop deck.
Okay.
The only thing that would be at that level would be that stairwell area coming up, which may be 5 feet by 10 feet, and the rest of it will be open space, pretty much.
And 4-foot wall around it for
Right.
safety.
Well, yeah, parapet wall or something around the exterior.
Go to that view.
I don't think it's going to be as high.
Was your question how much of the roof deck, how much space does the roof deck take? Does it take the full
Clarify it.
Well, the only thing
perimeter
that's going
of
to
the
stick up
building?
that high is that stairwell as you come up. If you were coming up.
That's a stairwell in the rail.
No,
Yeah.
sorry.
So 4 feet wide or 5 feet wide by 8 or 10 feet.
One of these elevations.
The only structure that would be up there.
Yeah, and a little wall.
Was it here?
No, I think it's a drive aisle.
There. So,
You can see the little, between the yellow umbrella and the blue umbrella, that's what we're talking about. There's a little structure right there where the staircase is.
The gray one or the brown one?
You want to move your cursor on top of it?
Right in
That
Where his
right
cursor
there?
is.
And that's for two units, right? Because they're back side by side?
Correct.
So one is to the unit to the right and one's the unit to the left.
Correct. In this drawing, now, our drawings are not finalized. There's a lot of things that we don't know what works and what doesn't because we're not there yet in the process, but this is the idea that we're going for.
and Brad, I mean, without the architecture understanding, will this be a flex room or any other use in the 4-story application? So that's what we're trying, in our floor plans, working on, that on the 4-story component where we have a roof deck, that this may be a room or a usable space up on that level, as you can see here. So I want to make sure to clarify that you guys were saying only 3 stories, but the massing, that's a great example of your 4-story, application there in this view, where you would have the 4th getting up to the rooftop in this configuration.
And again, the purpose of these rooftop decks are to kind of bring people outside, enjoying the views. And I don't want to restrict the ability to do that. The market might require that, or nobody might want it. So I would like to have the language that we work together with staff on be the language that we keep. That would be what we would like to do.
But there's no definition, or obviously there's a lot of different interpretations of what roof deck could be and size. So it could be a full or 80% of the top of a roof and it could be an enclosed structure. a wet bar, I don't know, indoor pool.
I guess I suppose that could be subject to a height restriction. But I find it hard to believe that you'd have a full living floor on top. That doesn't seem like, that restricts really the whole purpose of the outdoor living.
It actually doesn't call for a fourth floor. It calls for a fourth floor use of the deck. It doesn't call for a room up there.
Correct.
So you would have to shorten everything else in there to stay under that elevation. So none of the higher ceilings that you're looking for would be there. They would have to be reduced to allow for a room on that fourth floor.
So you're saying because the use is limited to a roof deck, it would prohibit the use for a fourth bedroom?
Not without adjusting it in
Because
there.
the maximum allowed height for a 4-story structure shall be 52 feet.
The only thing contemplated is a deck
No,
and the access to
it's
get
not
to
what
the
it
deck.
reads. If the deck is in parentheses, and including a 3-story unit with a 4-story deck. But if you take the parentheses out, it says the maximum allowed height for a 4-story structure shall be 52 feet.
So that'll be the structure regardless.
Could be.
Could be, yeah. But I mean, if they choose to put a deck up there, there's not going to be a room. If they want a room, then everything else is going to have to
Then
be.
the deck isn't there. But so the
Right.
point is, you could have a 4-story building at 52 feet.
Sure.
The way the language is stated would not protect us against that.
No.
Okay.
Theoretically, your amendment could be to basically just say you're limited to 3 stories with the 4th story only comprising a deck and deck access. And that would, 3 livable stories.
Sounds like a decent amendment to me.
Does that work for you guys?
It sounds like that was your intent.
Okay, so what I hear you describing is the units adjacent to South Prince Street as well as the units along the river. Those units would be, or I guess could be, a certain height, maybe subject to Section A. They could still have a rooftop deck, but they couldn't have a full living quarters on those. So the height would stay the same, we're just now restricting building on that. Is that right?
What I was trying to say was the units are really 3 stories with the exception that if you have a deck, the access to the deck could be a 4th story, period.
Correct.
Okay.
Right. So if we're saying that we can still have the access to the deck with a little structure we have up there, which is why we have that height, but yet on those units on Prince and on the Platte, you can't like build out a whole 4th floor with living quarters.
Well, you can build it out anywhere. The whole development is 3 stories. The only 4th story is the deck with the access, from what I can tell.
Well, I think that's my understanding. I don't think you need to limit the interior units because you won't see those from anywhere.
But they're not proposing anything other than, they're not proposing 4 stories.
That's what it says.
Well, but I think that's just not written the
Their
way it was
intent was
intended.
not to propose 4 stories, although it is written that it would be allowed.
That's the way it would be approved.
And that's what I'm saying. I think if the amendment is that we say they're all 3 stories unless they're a unit with a deck and deck access, that's the only way to get to the 52 feet. You can't have an enclosed structure and you can't have an extra floor with living quarters.
Which I've done many times, a wet bar, a bathroom up there, and then you have a deck. It's a
Man cave.
Okay.
Yeah, deck for 100 of your closest friends, yeah.
Drawings.
Yeah, just some of the elevations.
And the other question that the board debated was whether or not you would want, if we want to limit decks or exclude decks from the outside perimeter, meaning the east and the west. That was the other piece we were debating. I feel like I have to remove my motion. Can I remove my motion? Because I don't really know what it
Not
was.
now, we need to wait till we're done with
Okay.
public comment.
Would you give us 1 second to clarify some of our architects' elevations that they put together based on your comment on the 4th story, just so we can, while we're kind of in this open format, just clarify that? Would you guys just give us 1 moment to look that up? I know that.
So we need to check the Broncos.
Jeremy, could you clarify the fourth story use? If we
Yeah, should we just take a 5-minute, can we take a 5-minute break in the middle of a public hearing?
basically a stairway.
We can do a 5-minute recess.
We'll do a 5-minute recess. We'll come back at 8:51.
What's that? You guys can.
Conservative, the way it's paper.
Are we all here? Yes. We're ready?
This official.
Okay. So we are back on in public hearing, and the applicant was addressing a question posed. If the applicant wants to come back up and provide clarity.
Thank you for taking a quick recess. So we clarified that the rooftop access, just to start, will be only a portal, a stairway portal for access to the rooftop deck. So whether or not that's, let's call it an access portal, because if it's an ADA unit, I don't know if there would be a small elevator or stairwell. So that's kind of where we clarified that for the 4-story. Now, and from what I understand, the question also at hand is whether or not that exists on the perimeter or on the Prince Street. But that clarifies, hopefully, what's been in question.
So what was being defined as a 4th story is in fact the roof, an access portal for the roof deck.
Correct.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any more questions for the applicant or Andrea? Because I will open it up to the public again. Any more questions for Andrea or the applicant? No. So since we did open up the public hearing, if anyone in the public wants to come up and speak again, you're welcome to. What's that?
Yes.
Yes.
You have 3 more minutes to talk if you'd like.
Because we reopened it, I guess.
Didn't expect that, so I wanted to mention something about rooftop decks and little patios right next to each other. If you have a fire pit out there, and I have personal experience with this, neighbors who really like to have fires every night, twice a week, the smoke is going to blow into your bedroom or your deck or somewhere else. The smoke doesn't vanish and it doesn't go up. It's going to go sideways and get into the next guy's space. And there are so many of these units so close together that somebody's going to be cooking somewhere with smoke all the time. So you're going to get smoke into the neighbors' spaces. And the other thing about proximity to the river is walking dogs. So what I know about the Riverside guys is there's a nice big space there. They actually put out bags for people walking their dogs, and there's a lot of space for that to happen. In this place, there's not much. So they're actually pushing the dog stuff onto the river space, the public space, by having, and I'm quite sure there's far less space between these buildings and the river compared to Riverside. The comparison that they used was a corner that's close, but all the rest of Riverside is much further from the river. So again, the density on this site has problems built in. I do not understand, if we have multi-housing limits, why these folks, when they ask for rezoning, just don't say, could we have the multifamily limits? And they ask for more. Because there are reasons for the multifamily limits that make it better for people to live close to each other. And I know, having lived in this situation, that the smoke coming in your bedroom or onto your patio is no fun if you don't smoke. And the dog thing, pushing it onto the river space, I don't like. Again, the bottom line is, please, why don't you just let them live with the current standards instead of exceeding the standards to do this rezoning? I don't understand. They should have more open space inside to give more living space and breathing space between these dense units. So a consideration, Planning Commission. Thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay. I will close the public hearing again. All right. We had a motion on the table that I had stated that I am going to withdraw. given clarity that we've gotten now. And who seconded me on that?
I think I did, and I'll withdraw the second.
Okay. So, do we have an amendment on the table? I'll write one. I wrote one. Let's see if I have it. So the amendment is that all units will be limited to be 3 stories unless there is a deck or deck access that would allow for a 4th story on the building. Limited to 50% of the buildings on the property. This helps to address that not every building will have a rooftop.
I'll second that.
Any discussion?
It sounds like we're solving problems we don't have.
That's right. That's what
I know that we're trying to protect this in the interest that they don't build, but the next project would have another site development plan, inevitably. There'd be some sort of, yes, we may be stuck with this, and yes, there may be a roll of the dice that this gets built in the next 2 to 3 years, or hopefully sooner. But at the end of the day, whatever the next project is probably going to have to go through a similar design aspect to it. We're not going to have Soviet block housing at 52 feet. I absolutely don't see that happening.
Well, I think that's what this motion is doing. It's kind of protecting or ensuring that doesn't happen.
I think we're solving problems that we're hoping don't exist.
We're mitigating against the risk, is how I would say.
So to that end, I think we're slicing and dicing too much.
I agree.
Any other discussion?
I don't mind the concept. I'm not sure about the 50% piece. I mean, I don't know. They may not even want to do 50%, or they may want to do slightly more because of the view corridors.
I'm trying to, I hear the point of, is it 50, is it 40, is it 60? I guess that's to be determined. Trying to put a factor in that is relatively close to what was indicated earlier, that 27 units would be the
I think this level of delineation should be done at the zoning conversation level. It shouldn't be project by project, and we shouldn't be spot picking what we're putting on particular parcels. If we would like that PDRs will have a certain height restriction and have a certain look restriction and have a certain deck restriction, we address that in the zoning code. But short of doing that, I don't think we should be writing zoning code as we're moving forward.
So I don't think we're writing zoning code here. This is a PDR, and it's a variance that we're applying to this.
I'd like to get to the main motion, and I'd like to vote on it, and I think we're wasting a lot of time nickel and diming this.
Okay. Any other discussion? And we'll go ahead and...
So was your motion seconded?
So the motion was seconded with 50%. Do you want to vote? You guys ready to vote on that?
Vote on that.
Okay, the vote is 2 to 4, and the motion does not carry.
Okay.
Let me try one last shot at this, and then we'll move on. I'm going to amend the motion to say that all the units in the development will be 3 stories, with the exception of access portals to deck units that could be up to 52 feet, specifically for the access portal.
No restriction on interior, exterior units, nothing, just...
No, it's whatever, yeah, however they want to shake it out. Needs a second, though.
I'll second.
Sorry, you did?
Yes. Thank you.
And again, to Andrew's point, I don't want to slice and dice this thing too far, but I think the issue we've been wrestling with is they're 3-story units, and the only way they go 4 stories is not with enclosed space up top. It's just the access portal, which was in the picture, and I think that's what we're trying to convey when you guys get around to the final design structures, if this passes.
Okay. Ready to vote?
All right, this amendment passes unanimously.
Okay. Now we get to the main motion. The main motion being to approve Planning Board Resolution number 22-2016, which forwards a favorable recommendation to City Council. Any discussion? Or second first, please.
As amended.
I did not say as amended. As amended. There's a second?
Second.
Okay. Any discussion on the main motion as amended?
I'll make one comment.
Mark, do you have anything?
Yeah, I'm struggling with this one. I have 2 pages, as Commissioner Graham is turning green looking at, things that I had trouble with this development, and now I'm not quite sure, based on the testimony and some of the amendments. I have some trouble with the developer counting on the South Platte River corridor for providing all the open space, all the amenities. Therefore, they provide little open space in this development. No amenities. You know, if you want amenities, go take a hike to the river. I find that troubling. I think it as a sea of buildings and driveways with these patios they talk about and promote are, quite frankly, postage size with no privacy. And page 2 of the general plan development plan shows a comparison between the apartments to the north and this development. The difference is startling from what turns out to be 51% open space to 25% open space. The justification for the development talks about an outdoor, a comprehensive plan justification for the development. Talks about open outdoor Littleton. There is no outdoor Littleton within this development. Like as I said, you want outdoor, go take a hike to the river. I do agree that this site is not suitable for a commercial site. It's partially self-induced. You sell off the portion of the land facing Bellevue and makes the backspace not viable for any commercial use. It's also not, it's not good for retail. It's not good for pretty much office use. Just doesn't have the fronting to a large busy street. I do see this site is suitable for this type of residential development. But not at this, I consider this to be cell block density with nose-to-nose units, creating anemic canyons between the buildings. Lastly, I want to quote page 9 of the legislative text, quote, Plat 56 is an urban-style development in which amenities such as shared open space and pools are traded for a high quality of design, unquote. If ever there was an indictment against a development, this is it, and it's in the legislative text. If quality is talking repeatedly of frosted glass garage doors and colored concrete driveways, fostering neighborhood interaction, this proposal is a failure. I'm not quite sure how this proposal got to us looking like this.
Any other discussion?
Just in terms of context, the parcel above and this parcel, the parcel above benefits because there's a bend in the river right there. And in fact, the river, depending on what direction you're going, I guess goes away as it goes downstream, goes away from the parcel above, expanding the lot. This one's kind of boxed, and if we were looking at the entire PDC area with Walgreens and this back parcel as if it was the first time we'd ever look at it, we would be presented with a mixed-use development that would put the commercial in the front and would put the residential in the back, and this is exactly what we would ask for within that. So I don't think the open space, I do agree, and contrary to Mark here, I do agree that the river can be counted as open space because I think the river really does activate this parcel. I think the river really is part of this parcel, and everything we've ever said, in fact, as I was looking at the comp plan, and on page A4 there's a drawing that looks a lot like this drawing that we see there. So I think it's a lot of what we're asking. I think this property is a good idea. I think it's a nice parcel. I think the price point is good. I think it's exciting. I'm not in the market, but I'd buy one. It sounds pretty nice. I was specifically targeting parcel 28 or 41 I kind of liked. And I think, you know, if I lived there, if I was of a certain age, I would go use Riverside Downs. I would go walk the trail, and I would feel very welcome as that's part of my backyard. I also think, too, in terms of the future development in the city, there's a trailer park home or trailer park parking lot kind of just north of that is not activated, and it is what it is, and if the property owner's happy, you can keep it, it's fine. But there's the mall there where there's the liquor store and the yoga studio and the Taco Bell that really could benefit from this kind of activation in that area. And I would think that that's going to be really powerful as we continue to move down towards Federal and Bellevue with some of the additional, that if we have a high quality development, we may be able to attract other high quality development along that corridor. So I love the idea. I think it's a great idea. I think it's a nice product, and I'm certainly leaning in the direction that we're going to do this.
Any other discussion? Bruce?
I'm going to agree with Commissioner Graham. A couple of just observations on this. The code does call specifically section 10-2-23D says for multifamily PDR, you have to have 25% open space requirement. They have 25% open space requirement. I can't overtly fault them for that, but I tend to agree that in the grand scheme of things, and I take your point, Mark, but in the grand scheme of things, it is next to the Mary Carter, and the whole purpose is connectivity with the river at some level. I would be hard pressed to not. I know that the traditional open space calculation wouldn't include it, but I'd be hard pressed not to say there's not a theme there. We haven't talked much at all tonight, but I mean, well, we sort of did. I mean, Andrew mentioned a little bit about some of the other retail space there, but I think this is a huge positive for the merchant base in that area. And the fact of the matter is the city lives on sales tax revenue, and if you put affluent millennials and these kinds, or whoever, in these kinds of units, and they're going to spend money, hopefully they'll spend it on the south side of Bellevue instead of the north side. Technically, the King Soopers is in Inglewood, which is regrettable, but be that as it may, I think there's absolutely benefit for the merchants in the area. Other thing I was going to tell, we've been talking about height a lot. I was just going to mention that a few blocks to the south, we have, what, a 9-story building, one of those apartment buildings there behind, across the street from the Home Depot is like 9 stories, and then we just approved a 5-story development not too long ago on Main Street, so I'm a lot less concerned, if you will, in this particular location about some of the height-related issues. According to, I'm just going to wrap this up, but according to I like to always quote from this Colorado Land Planning and Development Law book that I've got, which makes me a practicing non-attorney. The essence of a PUD, or planned unit development, which is essentially what this is a deal, an exchange of flexibility by the local government for extra quality amenities or something else the community would not otherwise get from a developer. Since neither side is forced to accept the deal, if it feels the deal is not fair, there are a few limits on what the deal can address. In this instance, we're allowing a rezone, and we're allowing something that's probably a smidge more dense than I think a lot of us would prefer, in exchange for an infill development instead of a vacant lot, an ownership versus rental product that we have been desperately looking for a long time, support for the local merchants, lack of traffic-related issues because we've got major arterials that access this site, so forth and so on. I think there's an awful lot of benefits for the community, and so the deal we're striking seems fair to me, and I'll support it.
Kurt? Nothing. Okay, so I do have some comments that I want to make. My concern coming in, reviewing the staff report was really on height and the open space variances here. And I have gotten comfortable on height given what 4 stories now represents versus before. So we're a little bit closer to what's there for Riverside Apartments, what's there as part of the original PDR. On the open space is where then my other point comes in, because, 25% versus the 51% that was there for the original PDR that Riverside Apartments developed on is a big change. And again, the intent of the open space is to encourage that community and have somewhere to go other than, your garage. I know that some of that changes. As I've said, I've seen that in Stapleton where people congregate on driveways and things like that. I'm still feeling like this is not in character with the intent of an outdoor Littleton. That's where I would have liked to seen more open space. Policy 4.1 talks about building upon the assets unique to Littleton, which includes the river. And in this case, I would argue a high-density development on the river, so close to the river that we actually saw, at least the trail that was the walking trail, does not add value to those enjoying the trail. So it may add value to those residing here, but I think to look at the community as a whole, it's actually detracting from those experiencing the trail because of how close it abuts. Now, if the open space was higher, and whether we say 40% or 50%, it does not necessarily, that alone would not necessarily protect us or suggest that open space would end up near the trail access anyway. So from my point of view, I think the open space is still not completely resolved for me. But I think it's a great development. It's exactly what we would like to see more of in Littleton. I think this should be residential. I would have liked to seen a little more space in this development. Okay. Ready to vote? Oh.
The motion as amended passes 4-2.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. Next up, we have PB Resolution 18-2016, ordinance amending Title 10 of the City Code concerning definitions of group home for persons with handicaps, handicap, and assisted living facility, and to add supplementary standards for group homes for persons with disabilities.
Yeah.
He's good with a comeback.
Good evening, Planning Commission. I like the sound of that.
Yep.
We keep saying it long enough, we'll remember it.
Yeah, right. Thank you. So yes, as Chair Elrod said, we're here this evening to discuss an ordinance amending Title 10 of the City Code concerning 3 definitions: the definition of group home for persons with handicap, the definition of handicap, and the third one is assisted living facility. And the fourth thing is to contemplate and consider adding supplementary standards for group homes for persons with, the proposal is disability versus handicap. So you all are making a recommendation. This then does go on to City Council in the form of an ordinance. Definitions need updating, the 3 that we just mentioned. We did receive an application concerning a group home for persons with handicaps and some related litigation, and that has prompted this amendment, or these amendments rather. Currently, the top bullet is the city's definition of group home for persons with handicaps. Currently, group home for persons with handicaps are permitted in the residential districts throughout the city, in transition district, in the CA district, and they're generally characterized by people living in a single dwelling unit. The code does currently distinguish group homes from larger scale facilities, which may provide 24-hour nursing and medical care, and I listed those other definitions in our code that would be the larger scale facilities. And these larger scale facilities are permitted in R5, T, and CA district and are generally characterized by multiple units within a facility. And currently, Littleton has 9 group homes for persons with disabilities and 6 larger facilities which may provide that 24-hour nursing and medical care. And in case you wondered where, this is a general, well, it is the map of the city. It's a little hard to read, but the yellow are the group homes for persons with disabilities, and the blue squares are the larger skilled facilities. The current code does not provide a maximum for the definition of group home with persons with disabilities. We do have another definition, group home for the elderly, and that has a maximum residency of no more than 8 residents. So the recommendation is that the definition for group home for persons with disabilities use the same residency of a maximum of 8 that we have for group home for the elderly. And creating consistent standards with the maximum residence in one dwelling unit ensures the character of the residential neighborhoods be maintained in terms of traffic and parking impact. And what we're intending here is that maximum of 8, meaning within the interior of our residential neighborhoods. Because as we know, there are some properties in the city's residential zone districts where they do provide direct access off of more of our arterial streets, for example, along Broadway. And in these instances, based on that location of the residential properties, a larger group home may be acceptable. So the second recommendation is to allow a maximum of 12 people when the dwelling unit is along a major arterial street. In contemplating what number to allow the increase above 8, it did appear on research from other jurisdictions, as well as then looking at our own code. And other jurisdictions range from 12 to 15 as a maximum. That doubling it, so 16 did seem to be too much for our residential areas, even if you're located along that arterial. So if we just did a half of that, up to 12, did appear to be still consistent within the transitional character of these residential properties, meaning that often along the arterials there have more traffic and noise, so that a bigger allowance for the number of persons with disabilities did seem appropriate. Littleton does have street classifications and major arterials. I listed them. In Littleton, those are our major arterials. So what we're contemplating this evening would allow for, if you had access in a residential area primary access was off of one of these major arterials, you would be allowed to have up to 12 folks. So again, just to reiterate that, we wanted to make some improvements and update our definition for group home or persons with disabilities. We also have in the code a definition of handicap, which we want to change to disability. Listed here. And then, as I mentioned, we also do want to add supplementary standards when, for the group homes, to ensure that the character of the residential neighborhoods are maintained. So we have 4 that will apply across the board. They're listed here. You must register with the city before operating, and these are group homes for persons with disabilities. The group home also must provide a copy of its state license, and no more than 1 cooking facility is allowed within the home, and the maximum number of persons with disabilities that may reside in the home is 8, or the maximum number licensed by the state, whichever is fewer. And it does appear to be appropriate within our residential neighborhoods, so the residential property is like internal to the neighborhoods. This seems to be a good overview of that. It also seems to be a good overview for any group home for persons with disabilities in the residential zone districts, with number 5 being that last criteria that you would look to when the home is located, primary access is off a major arterial street. So in this case, if someone in a residential zone district wanted to have up to 12 people with disabilities living in that home, maximum, they would have to have primary access off a major arterial designated street. It would have to be licensed by the state for that number, and the home would have to be compatible with the character of the neighborhood that surrounded it. Here is just a map showing you all of the group homes for persons with disabilities that we currently have in the city. Trying to make it a little easier for you to read that. The next one will probably complicate that a bit, but that's supposed to show you the residential neighborhoods that do have the group homes currently, and it ranges from R2 to R3 up to R5. The third definition that we would like to amend is the assisted living facility. And the main recommendation is to delete the last 2 sentences that are currently in that definition, which are the ones at the bottom of the slide here. Regarding the comprehensive plan, a dynamic limit Littleton, that policy 1.6, encouraging housing that responds to changing demands in local market, allow every generation and income group to call Littleton home, does appear applicable to this proposal. And with that, I'll take any questions.
Are these standards consistent with the best practices of the ADA? And have they been consulted regarding what they think city code should be regarding the treatment of disability?
We've had numerous conversations with our city attorneys regarding that, as well as with the state, yes.
But specifically consulting the ADA, we're just taking the advice of council on that?
For this moment in time, if you recall, the other thing is, and I made a note to that in the staff communication, on a larger conversation, planning board with our zoning steering committee have been looking at changes to the use table. And that would take it to the next step where we really just have the recommendation in that document, which we haven't fully vetted, but would be to just call all group homes small and group home large.
So upon approval of this, we'll be as current as 2016, 2017 in terms of what is appropriate for cities to do regarding people with disabilities.
Correct.
Does this also meet all federal requirements?
I'm sorry?
Does it meet all federal requirements?
To the best of my knowledge, yes.
You make reference to litigation. Who's litigating who here?
We had an application that was submitted to the city regarding a group home for persons with disabilities, and they are litigating the city.
What district was it? What zoning district was it in?
R3.
Can you give me a general location?
Along
Not
Broadway.
appropriate. I'm sorry?
Along Broadway.
Broadway, okay. Was there any consideration that...
And I'm sorry, Mark, I take that back. R2, I had the wrong. It was R2.
2?
Yes.
Okay. Yep. Let's see, was there any consideration, say, in the R1, R2, R3, R3X to maybe lessen the number of people with disabilities in those districts, and maybe in the higher density districts, R4, R5T, CA, upping that number to a higher number? Or,
You know, that's a good question, and we really did look at holistically. The city does have a variety of other group homes in our definitions, and the one that has a limitation is the group home for elderly, and that's across the board. So using that as seeming, our general litmus tests, it made sense to use that number of 8 across the board.
In the code, there's a 750 feet between home minimum for elderly homes. Is there going to be a 750 minimum distance between homes for people with disabilities?
That's not currently being proposed.
Any reason why? I mean, if you're across the board trying to make it even for elderly and people with disabilities, why wouldn't you include that 750 or get rid of the 750?
Yes, I think that's a really good point. This is really an interim next step, if you will, to bring us current relative to state and federal requirements about persons with disabilities, but recognizing that absolutely based on, and you guys know this from the conversations we've had about the land use table, we do need to have that next conversation that really talks about holistically all of the group homes that we have in the city and how do we want to manage those.
Okay. Last question. Is staff included in the 8 maximum? You could have 1 or 2 staff members that would bump up that number in a home to 10.
That's correct.
Or staff excluded?
Staff is excluded.
Excluded?
And I'll go back to the definition here. Let's see. Based on the supplemental standards number 4, the maximum number of persons with disabilities that may reside in the home is 8, or the maximum number licensed by the state. And then number 5 talks about the maximum number of persons with disabilities that may reside in the home may be up to 12. So the caps are specifically limited to the persons with disabilities. So if you had 8 and then 2 staff, the 2 staff that come and provide the care would not count in that cap.
Okay. A little bit of concern in that, let's say home for the elderly or people with disabilities could still be driving, but let's say a home, a single-family home that's bought and changed to elderly or people with disabilities, single-family house, R3. You've got visitors, you've got staff coming in and out, you've got deliveries, you've got this and that. You have maybe some of the residents driving. It could be a considerable, what's the word? I don't say problem, but increase the traffic in that particular portion of the neighborhood. Would you agree to that? I know it's currently allowed up to 8 for the elderly, but a little bit of concern about the amount of traffic that this home could generate. Care to comment?
Sure, if you'd like me to, or do you want me to comment? Or?
Yeah, I don't think it was an editorial. It was a comment.
Okay, wasn't sure.
Okay, sorry.
When we looked at relative to living as just a single-family dwelling unit, it did appear that the maximum of 8 would still generally function like any other single-family dwelling unit along that same street.
Okay. Single family with 2 parents and 5 teenagers with cars or something like that. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Well, I wanted to commend staff for working through this diligently. I am aware you guys did research it. The first pass at this was not anywhere near as comprehensive as this. I know there was conversations, and I think, Andrew, to your point, with people who do this kind of work on a day-to-day basis and what is, as you say, best practices in the disabilities community. I'm pretty comfortable with all of this based on the changes that were made. I think you're drawing the right balance and the sensitivity to what the disabilities community needs as far as, and oftentimes what you get in homes like this is folks with pretty significant disabilities that require some level of extensive supports. But you have to be sensitive to the neighbors and the nature of the zone, and there's no intent to make it something that changes the character of the neighborhood. It's supposed to integrate, and that's what the disabilities industry, if you will, the caregiving industry, is balancing as well. The idea that people are getting the right supports and services, that they're in a good social environment, they're in a good area, in a good neighborhood, but they're not turning it into, 25, 30 people in a house kind of thing. So I think covers the bases on that, and subject to some of the tweaks that have been discussed that apply to other zoning related issues. I think this is a good piece of work.
Thank you. Kurt, anything? Lynn? Okay. If you could bring up the map again of where these are located.
Yeah. Just with the dots.
Not that, or just the yellow?
Okay, so I'm looking at the yellow are right now what are considered what we're calling the small group homes, smaller group homes.
I'll do that.
Sorry, group homes for what?
There you go.
Disability.
For persons with disabilities.
Okay. Okay, so these are really the ones that would be impacted today. This is what exists today. Of course, more can exist in the future. Okay. And of these, which are on major arterials?
So there are two that have direct access currently onto Broadway, which is a major arterial. There are two others that are on a corner lot, but they do not take access off of the arterial. So there's one adjacent to Littleton Boulevard, and I can't remember the side street, but their main access is off the side street. And similarly, there's one on Bowles, and I can't remember the side street, but the access is primarily off that side street.
Okay, so with the 12, where the increase would be allowed for 12, would only apply to potentially two current locations, which are the two that are here on Broadway only.
That is correct.
With the third assumption being that they need to still fit the character of the neighborhood. So one, they meet the access from the major arterial. There were three criteria, correct?
Correct. The access, that the character meets the character of the surrounding neighborhood, and the third is that the state has licensed up to that number.
Okay.
Yes.
And can you talk a little bit about what the state, when the state is licensing these types of facilities, what types of things are they looking at? So are they looking at the size of the room, how many people are in a building? What do you have a sense of some of the things that are considered in that licensing structure?
Yes. Generally, it's my understanding the things that you just mentioned. So the number of people in the bedroom, the size, there's a square footage requirement per each person, whether they're in a single room or in a double room. And then as far as access to the amenities, whether it's a bathroom and or the cooking facilities, and access to a yard and safety and a variety of other things like along those of just making sure it's a safe environment for the clients.
Okay. And in the scenario that Mark brought up about 750 feet from a similar use or the same use for elderly, do any of these do not look like any of them are within 750 feet of each other?
I did not measure them, but generally eyeballing it, I would agree.
Okay. Okay. So the change here is that the definition from handicap to disability is the proper terminology that should be used for this type of audience, essentially.
That is correct,
okay.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. I don't have any other questions. Anybody else? Okay. I'm going to open it up to the public. Do we have anything? Denise? Pam? I was going to say you're the only one left, but no, there is somebody else here.
So I'm going to rely on attorney, is it Dittman, to stop me if I get out of line. The case is Casco LLC versus the City of Littleton, and I'm going to only talk about what I believe is public record. Stop me if that's not the case. This house is on Broadway, just south of Ridge, and on the east side. And it was purchased in 2014 by this Casco group, which is fairly new. I couldn't find anything before 2014. Its website, Assisted Living on Broadway, attaches to Assisted Living of Colorado, and it lists 450 plus facilities. So they've moved into Littleton and bought this house on Broadway. They moved in with 9, planning to go to 10, but the state licensed them for 12, and they applied to the city to change a room into a garage into a bedroom for their extra 3 people to 3 people. One of the issues is that we tend to require, our language requires, it's the group home versus large, where you have resident or staff coming in. And these folks have 2 staff during the day and 1 staff member at night for 12 people. And they don't live there. These are people who come in and out. And I kind of wonder how you can care for 12 people with dementia without drugging them at night. This is a personal concern, has nothing to do with the case. So it sounded like our old code to me, limited it to 8. And the way that these folks are running it with people who come in and out and aren't even resident there, and there's 1 at night. We're changing the code, it looks like, to make this possible. I don't know. But that's the case. And like I say, my concern is, are we losing something here where we said we want care for people up to 8, and now we're allowing it to go up to 12. And I don't know whether the ADA allows that. I don't know whether the state or the feds allow it. Littleton, I don't think, has to, but I don't know. We're home rule. And should we? Is this the right thing to do? I don't know, but I have a concern. I've had occasion to visit 2 people with dementia and see them, and I do not understand how 1 person for 8 hours at night can manage 12 folks in that state. If it was my relative or me, I'd be concerned. So anyway, that's what I wanted to add to the public record. Thanks.
Thank you. Anybody else would like to comment? Okay. Okay, we'll close the, any follow-up questions for Jocelyn, actually, before I close? I'll have a follow-up question. So again, the one item I do want to confirm is that, in fact, this particular facility in question has obtained a state license to operate, serving 12 individuals. They have acquired that license?
Yes, that's my understanding. And currently, if you remember, in our code, we do not have a maximum. It's a minimum of 4 or more. So the intention here is really try to keep it within that character of the different areas.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. Any other questions for comment or follow-ups? No. Okay. I'll close the public hearing.
You want a motion?
Can we have a motion on the table?
I move to approve the resolution recommending approval to City Council for an ordinance amending Title 10 of the City Code concerning definitions of group home for persons with handicaps, handicap, and assisted living facility, and to add supplementary standards for group homes for persons with disabilities.
Second.
Any discussion? So I actually, and maybe I should have done this before we put this motion on the table, I would like to make an amendment to include the 750-foot limit, so to be consistent with what we have for the group home for elderly.
It wouldn't be a limit, it would be a minimum separation.
Minimum separation. So I'd like to add that as an amendment. How do you want me to position this?
You'd have to withdraw and then put the amendment on.
Can I vote? Can I make them?
Just add.
No, it was seconded.
Okay.
It was seconded.
Okay.
Yeah. So just
agree.
you just made your amendment motion, and if someone wants
She
to
just makes an
second that.
amendment. And we vote on
Okay,
the
so I'm
amendment.
making the amendment. I need someone to second it?
Yep.
Okay. So I'd like to make a motion to amend, or my motion is to amend the current resolution to include 750-foot, what did you say?
Separation.
Minimum separation?
Minimum separation from the same use. I need a second on that.
I'll second that.
Okay. So we will, any discussion on that?
I don't know that I have a problem with it, but we have 2 group homes in my neighborhood, and one caters to brain injury, and I'm not certain what the other caters towards. We had a lot of concern when they were changing it from R1 use to group home use, and our concerns were not warranted. Would be the primary thing I'd say. These are professionally run places. Yes, there can be poorly professionally run places without doubt, but they are state licensed, they are state inspected, they are state secured. The level of traffic regarding trucks or supplies are during the day, and in these residential neighborhoods, nobody's home anyway. So it's really not a challenge. And in terms of impact on the community, it's actually championed. To see these people with disabilities walking around the neighborhood with assistance, with support. I think it is prudent to be concerned about proximity and everything else, but in terms of practice, in my experience, we haven't seen that to be an issue.
Were these facilities in former single-family homes?
They were former single-family homes that were converted into group homes, and they had to come to our homeowners association for approval of that. And it was a very vocal meeting, and then in hindsight, it hasn't been that big of a deal.
I think what this helps to do is just ensure that it doesn't always get grouped in the same place, and then you have a whole area that's just for these types of services. And I think, again, the intent of why some of this is allowed in residential is for it being healthier to integrate into the community, into society, as opposed to being alienated to just one section. So I do think this 750 helps to.
The intention of the group homes in our neighborhood are to ease the transition from Craig Hospital into come back to real life. Except we can't put you in your home yet because you're not ready for your home yet, and frankly, your family might not be ready for your home yet. This facility is a good transition home for those people.
Can I have a question for staff? And perhaps our legal counsel, any group homes that are currently closer than, say, if the 750 feet passes, I assume would be grandfathered in and exempt? Okay.
Okay, all right.
Are there any state rules regarding proximity of group homes?
There are not that I'm aware of. I mean, this is all FHA and ADA driven in terms of what is a reasonable accommodation, and you have to ensure reasonable accommodations for these types of facilities. And there's not really many bounds in terms of what it actually means. It's all driven by court decisions, so there's no hard and fast rule on this.
Are we setting the city up for a potential liability by stating a proximity of group homes to each other?
It's hard to say. It's the nature of these types of cases where there's a lot of them, and people have taken issue with all sorts of different conditions placed on the siting in these facilities. That's about all I can say without getting out too much into our litigation, which I can't speak to.
Okay. Okay, are we ready to vote then?
This is on the amendment.
The amendment.
750 feet.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, regarding the amendment for 750 feet, it is,
Voted against your own amendment.
We didn't have all the votes in.
Not all votes were in. Now they are, and it's
Now what? Who wins?
It fails.
okay, so the motion is tied 3-3, so the motion fails.
No, the amendment.
The
I'm
amendment.
sorry, the amendment fails.
Yeah.
Oh, you scared me. Okay, all right, so now we have the main motion on the table. We have the main motion on the table, and that was, who made the main motion?
I made the motion.
Andrew, and who's second?
Second.
Okay. Any additional discussion on that? No. Okay, let's go ahead and vote.
The motion to approve the resolution is unanimous, passes.
All right.
Wow. It's been an interesting evening.
12 minutes to spare.
All right. I don't, let's see, anything else on the agenda tonight? I am now opening it up to public comment on non-agenda items. If anyone would like to speak? No? Okay. So we will close public comment on non-agenda items, and we'll move to comments or reports from staff. Do you have anything? Okay. Members, anyone? Okay. I am meeting with someone to talk about community character and just get some, get a little bit more knowledge and information of different definitions for community character. If anybody wants to join me, just let me know. We'll keep it at only two of us, so first come, first served, so it doesn't become,
Noticing all that
it's
other
a very
stuff.
informal conversation. Just wanted to let you guys know if anyone wants to join me, please let me know. Okay, that's all I have. Meeting adjourned. Thank you, everyone.